we're live, and Shemley and Matt's already in the chat.
Been here for like 10 minutes.
Welcome, boys, to the Civil War Podcast, our annual Wednesday podcast. We have a very special guest with us here today. He doesn't need much introduction. His voice alone should tell you who he is.
Oh.
You do. You have a very iconic voice. You are very well spoken.
Yes, no, to be sure. Well, hello, everyone. I'm the one that he said is featured in the title, Brandon F.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
The one, the legendary Brandon F.
Oh, that's a bit much, don't you think?
No. I think legendary is the perfect status for you, my friend.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Oh, and Bill has joined us this evening. Hello, Bill. Or as many on YouTube might know him as Bryce. Does he have his mic working?
Reenactor here.
Ah, yes. Bill is here.
That doesn't sound very Johnny Reb.
No,
Howdy, partners. My name's Bill. I'm from the South.
That sounds a bit more Johnny Reb.
Yes.
I kill Yankees for a living.
You and Brandon have something in common.
There we go. Yeah.
All right. Oh, let's get into this. The subjects we will have tonight, as long as we have Brandon F. in here with us, are the scales of the conflict of the Revolutionary War and Civil War. Let's go. For those of you who don't know, Brandon is a Revolutionary War reenactor. Yeah, he fights for the crown, but we won't hold that against him.
The good guy. Someone has to be
Tolerant.
And we're going to talk about the like I said, the scale of the conflicts, perhaps maybe some of the weaponry that was used. And honestly, when I look at like my 1862 here and Brandon's Brown Bess, I see a lot of similarities in shape and overall look from a distance. They look very similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down to the triangle bayonets, although theirs are much, much bigger. I think definitely the bayonet for the Brown Bess is much wider, I'd have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fun. I'll just say that much.
Yes. Actually, just got that yesterday. We are also joined with our friends Matt and Bill, as I said before. Yes, Kekri, I actually got Brandon. He heard the call of another person from Ohio, and that's our bond. We're both from Ohio, we're both sad about it.
I managed to escape Ohio. That's the important thing.
Yeah, but you'll never escape the corn.
No. It's always there somewhere.
Yeah. So, with all that being said,
in here. Sniff, sniff.
Okay. Did you say you have a scratch and sniff tattoo?
No.
Oh. Moving on. Let's get into. Let's see. Where should we start?
Well, talk a little bit about everyone's individual impressions.
Fair enough. I have. You know what? Since you're the honored guest,
Oh.
how about you start?
All right. So, well, first things first. I'm located in Massachusetts. For anyone who may not be aware, and out here, a really big organization is the Brigade of the American Revolution. I'm actually a board member with the brigade, and sort of like an umbrella organization that has both British and American and French, and like all the different sides have units within the umbrella organization. They organize events and handle like insurance and all the administrative stuff. For my actual unit, I am with His Majesty's 54th Regiment of Foot. They are a regular infantry regiment. We portray a battalion company of that regiment, meaning that we are not light infantry or grenadiers. We are like run-of-the-mill, average, everyday soldiers in the impression, nothing like special or elite. Red coats with those bright green popinjay green facings. And the regiment actually didn't really do all that much in terms of like combat history in the war. They mainly were based in Rhode Island, and they were going around basically conducting, how to say, not a punitive raid, that's a later term, but like basically a number of operations that they were involved in effectively consisted of just like, the British became aware that the rebels were holding or hoarding like supplies in some region, in some area in like Connecticut or whatnot, like what is today, Fairfield, Connecticut and whatnot, like a lumber mill or something like that, or in what is today Fall River in Fall River is technically in Massachusetts, but like these different like coastal towns. So the 54th was one of those groups that would usually be like put on a couple of boats. They would sail over to that town. They would go ashore. They would burn a whole bunch of stuff down, and then before like rebel forces, militia and whatnot could gather enough strength to oppose them, they would run back over to their boats, get back on the ships, and then run away. So that is it's because of that role effectively that the regiment actually gained the nickname of the Flamers historically, which is an entertaining enough name, I know, but that's actually what Washington referred to them as. And then that's pretty much all the regiment did. Like they weren't engaged in all too many like major battles, but their own individual history is a very particular one. Like it's a story that's not often shared with the American War of Independence. This idea of like of raiding and whatnot. So, not the big battles, not the big set piece things, but like these little side operations that were carried out by both sides to aid their overall war efforts. All right, I'll stop rambling now. 54. That's it.
No, I love listening to you ramble because you have an ability to speak clearly with precision while rambling. When I ramble, I will stutter over the same word 7 times, turn it into 3 different words, and come out with a completely different word than what I started with.
Yeah. See, now here's the thing, though. What you see on the videos, that's the cleaned up version. Normally, for every 10 minutes of footage I put out there, there's like 20 minutes behind it of me saying the same thing over again, like rehearsing and like, no, I don't like the way I phrased it that time, and stumbling and whatnot.
Now, what you were saying about the 54th, it sort of sounds like they were mainly given the jobs of sending a message, so to speak.
An interesting way of putting it. Yeah, I mean, to be sure, the operations that they were going on in places like Fall River and in Fairfield and in Groton, with Groton Heights and whatnot, there's a fort there that they were involved with taking. None of the operations were explicitly done, to my knowledge, with the idea of like, all right, well, this doesn't actually serve a tactical purpose, but what we want to do is to like send an ideological message. However, that definitely would have been an element to the missions that they were carrying out. The idea that you are going ashore, you're locating a lumber mill or a warehouse or something like that, and you are destroying it because it is rebel-held property and it is being used by the rebel forces, and then you're leaving before you're not actually securing any territory. You're not like gaining any property or any territory. You're just destroying an asset and then you're leaving. That does develop a very particular kind of image of the kind of soldier that you are and of the kind of campaign that an enemy is waging. The British really suffered with that problem really throughout the entirety of the war. Is okay, so is this like a campaign of hearts and minds, or is this a campaign of like devastation and destructing the rebels to heal? And they went back and forth an awful lot with that.
Okay.
The 54th was definitely a certain end of that spectrum.
Oh, no doubt. Matt, why don't you go and tell about your impression?
Sure thing, Red. I portray a Union soldier from the Union Army, not a specialized unit, basically a really well-dressed one. Shine brass, frock coats, white gaiters, white gloves, clean muskets. I'm a member of the 2nd New Jersey Brigade. It is a 501(c) nonprofit organization dedicated to battlefield preservation all throughout northeastern United States. My unit that I primarily do is the 7th New Jersey Company A, aka the Army of the Potomac's Guard Battalion. They saw a lot of combat in the war from October 1862 until about April 1865, losing they started out with about 1,000 men in 1862 and ended up with about 150 by the time they got to Gettysburg. So basically, we try to keep it as close to authenticity as we can, while also trying to educate as many people as possible. Events, parades, living histories, some reenactments. We have recently actually just acquired a sufficient amount of funds to hold us up for the next few years, and we are planning a lot of large-scale reenactments like you used to see back in the 1990s for like 2 or 3 years from now. So we're really excited for what could happen, and we're looking forward to the future. We have recently acquired several grants. We're almost upwards of like $500,000 in our accounts right now, so we're set to go.
Good stuff. It does seem like overall the reenactment hobby is really improving. Like more people are getting involved with it. It seems like the public is becoming a bit more receptive to these sorts of things, with some notable exceptions.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Right now in New Jersey, though, it's getting really hard with the amount of gun laws that are out. Though we actually just got fined by the government for having 10 fake rifles, and we got 10 $300 fines for it. We took care of it, obviously, but it's all good now. But it's getting hard on us. I'm actually running low on gunpowder. I'm down to about my last 2 pounds. I have like 4 percussion caps left, so it's getting hard.
Yeah.
Bill, would you like to go next?
All right. I portray the 9th Texas Dismounted Confederate Cavalry. They operated and still operate today from the Trans-Mississippi in the Texas area. But I portray Company A, the Tarrant County Volunteers in the 9th Texas. And historically, the unit fought in 11 major battles and in many different campaigns. His first battle was in Oklahoma at can't remember, but it was an Indian place called Tahula something, and where they lost about 125 men out of their 657. And for the remainder of the war, they considered they were a cavalry unit, but ironically, they didn't really have horses because the Confederacy had a very bad time of getting those horses. So most of the time they were mounted infantry. So what they do is that they would dismount, fire their rifles for a little, get back on the horses right away, and then make their stand on that ground, fight, shoot, run back, and the same thing over and over again. And at the end of the war, when they were surrendered, when the Confederacy lost the war, they only had about 95 men left from the original 1,050 men that started the war in 1861. And in our unit, we portray them and we honor our ancestors, including the men who fought under the unit. And we also honor our major's ancestor, who was the colonel of the 9th Texas, William B. Sims. And we operate in East Texas. So... And lately, we were supposed to be at Pleasant Hill, Louisiana, but of course, with you know what, it got canceled. And, well, we're also quite the memers. Trust me, if you ever come to our camp in any of the events, well, you're in for one heck of a ride.
Those are
there
always
will
the
be
best
either
ones.
tons of jokes or just plain stupidity. Besides with the officers, but well, at nighttime, well, they can get quite rowdy.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling that happens.
I expect nothing less from Texas.
Yeah, expect some weird stuff from us Texans.
I suppose it's my turn.
Go ahead.
Well, I just do this for a living. No. Just sit in front of a camera with a coat. That's about it. No, I actually portray 2 separate impressions. I am a private with the 4th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry. We were some of the few who chased down General Morgan during the Morgan raids. We played a central part in his capture. We fought all over the U.S. during the Civil War. I have a map somewhere, so I'm not completely done moving into my room yet, but I'll find it and bring it up. We fought all across. I know we fought a lot in Kentucky, mostly surrounding Ohio. It's a fun unit to portray with. We've actually brought back a lot of the Cav demonstrations and Cav recruitment in Ohio. Some people have told us that we alone have saved the Cav reenacting in Ohio. That being said, also
nice. I mean, there's not a lot when it comes to cavalry at most of these events, but at any time period,
especially for dismounted, and it's really fun. The mounted Cav love playing with us because not too often they get to fight with people on foot, but with us and our sabers, we get to actually clang against them, and they find it very fun. And the second portrayal I have is the uniform I'm wearing now. I am the adjutant captain at the moment to General August Valentine Kautz, who is in command of the 23rd Corps, who are mainly on the west. No, I can't remember right now.
Yeah, I mean all the specifics, but
yeah,
it's a lot of pressure. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm making this go good. It's like I feel like I'm like getting going through for a job and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, when it comes to I think the study of military history, a lot of people get bogged down in the exact details of in 1863 this corps moved in this direction under General such and such. It's like, well, but what about like what were the people in that corps feeling? Like, more I think a matter of material culture. Talking about the experience of the common soldier as opposed to just like numbers on chalkboards and little blocks moving around a map.
Yes, which is a lot of what I do with the 4th. We have our entire camp open to the public, and we get now. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot more of people are not asking, what was the Army doing at this point? They are now asking more general questions like, so what's it like living the soldier's life?
Yeah, like social history.
Probably. Yes, and I've even had a couple people, come and go, what are your reasons for joining the war? And I was starstruck in a way. I was like, well, I wasn't expecting that. I was actually more expecting
like, oh, I'm getting into character now.
I was more expecting. Did you sleep in that thing?
Yeah, is a fire real?
Oh, that's real. Oh, or is the food real?
Yep.
I even had someone
read one time what guy reenacted what did was he actually put like fake maggots on his hardtack to fool people. Oh, that was great.
That's actually a nice touch.
See, commitment would be real maggots, but I guess that works too.
Hey, you gotta get the protein.
That happened too one time. He found real maggots, put them on the thing.
Oh God.
Hey, maggots are protein.
Yeah.
So
I guess the big key would be getting over the fact that they're maggots.
Yeah, that's why you put them in a hot water and they'll come out.
Or you just drink a bottle of whiskey with them and you forget their maggots real quick.
Yeah, that too.
Another part about portraying the 23rd Corps is I get to now demonstrate what an adjutant's job would be, which is I think one of those jobs that's a little bit behind the scenes. You always hear about General Sherman, General Grant, Buford, all them, but you never think about their staff. And my job as adjutant is to make sure the general stays happy. He doesn't see one bit of paperwork at all. All the Army basically moves by my order, given by him. It's going to be interesting to portray, nonetheless.
Yeah, I think a lot of those behind-the-scene things are becoming a lot more popular lately. Like as far as how does this military machine actually operate? How does it run? Because I think people are increasingly beginning to realize that military history, the smallest portion of it is the actual battle.
Yes.
The average experience of a soldier is not, standing in the line and shooting at the enemy and doing bayonet charges and heroic music and flying flags. No, the majority of it is cleaning, mending equipment, looking for food if you can.
Marching and waiting.
Basic, like everyday survival type thing.
Yes.
Than anything else. Getting
people to support the cause without them knowing. And which was very risky, especially because during both the the 1700s and 1800s, people were still living off the land and hunted for food. So more than likely, the food you were taking from that farmer, he had a loaded gun at the on standby. So you had to be extremely cautious when foraging, I guess, as I should put it, because
and more often than not, it was blatantly a law or policy with the armies in that looting is forbidden. You are not to do it, and that looting in I suppose a more literal sense was how to say. Well, looting was not done as a matter of policy, and if it ever was, it was like explicitly as, oh, well, this person is with the other side, like they are a rebel, they are a literal traitor, so we are like confiscating their property, we're destroying their property, whatever, for the army. That sort of thing was done, but even then it was, again, because of that whole the difference between hearts and minds versus punishing the rebels. It was never really like a widespread policy. It was never done across the board by either side, really. There's this idea that more than anything else, what you need is the support of the local people, not only because, obviously the local people could turn against you, and if they do, well, then you just added to the insurrection, or in this case, you've just, sent, volunteers and recruits to the other side, but also the idea that, like, okay, well, sure, you can just, you can come across this guy and you can take his farmhouse, you can take his cattle, and you can take his horses and everything. But okay, what does that do at that point? Well, not only, again, if you sent the guy to the other side, but you've lost a potential ally in terms of your supply train.
Yes.
You've lost, you've damaged local commerce in such a way that you can no longer utilize it in future.
Yes.
One of the biggest things about the British Army in, particularly in the South during their campaigning, like Cornwallis in the Carolinas and whatnot, the sieges of Savannah, Battle of Camden, Yorktown, later years of the war. One of the biggest traits of all that is that the British Army is only ever able to go out of the cities so far because they don't have the support of the people in the countryside. They don't have the means to support the army going on these very, very long forays outside of the cities. And every time they, march out of the city, well, their supply lines are under risk. They're under threat because they can't control the actual terrain because the people are not supporting them in that region at that time.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it was this massive dynamic of, okay, well, the British Army, the overall idea of the strategy was we need to get a hold of the Continental Army, like the whole thing. We need to get Washington. We need to trap him. We need to defeat him fully, decisively. We need to destroy the army, capture the leaders and all that. And then after that threat is gone, we can then take our very small force, our very small army, distribute it around the countryside and actually regain control of this place as we need to. And in some places, like in New Jersey, actually, for a limited amount of time, they were able to kind of do that, earlier on in the war. But the thing is that the Continental Army pretty much always escaped. The British were never able to encircle it. They were never able to destroy it. And because the army was always out there as a threat, they were never able to divide their forces among the countryside to regain the control. And because the people didn't support them, they had no other means of, they were sort of like a catch-22. They couldn't go out and take these risky maneuvers to capture the Continentals because they didn't have the domestic support. And they couldn't, gain the domestic support without going out and destroying the Continental Army.
Yeah.
It's one of the most important dynamics of a conflict like that. In a war, it's going to be something similar, if not more extreme, although supply chains are a little easier when you're right there as opposed to 3,000 miles away.
Yes, that is one of the big things I don't think many people take into consideration when learning about history or going to a reenactment of any time is how did the people of that land feel about the army? Because, in my case, Union going into the South, more than likely, we stop a farmer and ask him, have you seen anything? He's not going to tell us the truth.
Yeah, because you are the invading army.
Exactly.
On his land.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
an example like the border states, Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, those states were heavily divided. So if you're a Union soldier and you're going into the Confederate areas that support the CSA in these border states, they're not really going to tell you, or unless they're going to get their gun and shoot you, especially in Missouri and Kentucky.
Right.
Those states were heavily even more divided than the state of Maryland and Delaware.
Oh yeah, Kentucky had both Union and Confederate regiments. I've even heard people argue that Kentucky had its own civil war going on within the American Civil War.
Yeah, and even before the Civil War, there was even more bloody fighting in the Kansas area, and all that fighting swifted into Kentucky and Missouri. That's where you have the border wars or bloody Kansas and such.
The Kansas and Missouri wars. I used to belong to a unit who used to portray a company of soldiers, the Redlegs, who during the Kansas Missouri War were known as Jayhawkers. We played a big part in that, which we used a lot of guerrilla warfare, which I'll admit was really fun to play because many a times did we raid Confederate camps and steal apples.
Give us your apple, boy.
All about the apples.
Oh, there was times like we snuck up behind the Confederates and we were kneeling down eating apples while everybody else was fighting. We see a Union commander like, we're just holding up apples like, no, we're eating.
I remember we did the same thing in Oklahoma. We were portraying Missouri Confederates, and we were all hiding in the bushes, and we were supposed to ambush a Yankee patrol. Well, it wasn't a patrol; it was basically the whole Union Army, and so it was just us. So we had to wait for the infantry to come. Well, we send them running, and so we capture about, I think, like 20 Union soldiers. We basically insulted them, beat them up, and then we shot them. And I think we were portraying Bloody Bill Anderson's boys. And so what we did to them, just like what Anderson did, we took trophies by skinning them and scalping them.
He didn't get the name Bloody Bill by being nice.
It was fun.
Sounds fun. Sounds aggressive.
I mean, that's Bloody Bill Anderson for you.
I mean, I think near the end we should definitely share more reenacting stories because you can never have too many of those.
Yeah,
agreed.
Oh yeah.
I need to get into Civil War one of these days.
Oh, if you ever make your way back to Ohio, I would put you in a uniform, but I don't think you could. My jackets would fit you.
Now, my dream impression for Civil War is as an observer, one of the British officers that came over in an official capacity to just kind of watch. And then I can just kind of roam around and act pretentious around people. I do that very well.
That would be interesting.
That would be one heck of an impression I don't think anybody has seen before.
Maybe a Coldstream Guard, perhaps?
Oh, God, no. Freeman there in an official capacity, and he's the one guy that they chose, and they put him in a red coat. He should be wearing a frock. Oh, it's terrible. That was
how to get Brandon F. going on a rant. So tell me, how is Colonel Fremantle accurate in Gettysburg?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he was at Gettysburg, but like he was there in a civilian capacity. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was just kind of a tourist.
Now,
whereas there were actual officers like of the Royal Engineers, oftentimes like from both Britain and from France as well, actually sent over to observe the war because, Europe had never seen a war like using the current technology that was on such a scale. So they're like, oh, well, hey, this will give us good information for when we have our own like massive conflict, and they're like, so let's watch. Yeah. And then all the guys in the Civil War, they keep on using like these Napoleonic tactics. They turn over to like the British or the French guys in the corner of their tent and they're like, what? This is what you did in the Crimean War. So they're like, yeah, we stopped doing that in the Crimean War for a reason. We got a lot of people killed.
Listen to an odd example.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that because I believe it was the Civil War Digital Digest who just put up a video asking the question, Was the Civil War the first modern or the last Napoleonic?
Oh, that's interesting.
In my opinion, it was both, because if you look at the beginning of the war, you see the Napoleonic tactics of marching in straight lines, artillery attacking first, then artillery exchanging fire, then infantry going at each other. But near the end, then you get into the trench warfare.
Petersburg and Vicksburg.
Petersburg and Vicksburg, yes. And then you also get grenades, which were very few, but they were used in the Civil War. They were known as tossback grenades because you could
and then you get the submarines, the H.L. Hunley and such, and all the different weapons, the multi-shot rifles, and all kinds of stuff. And hell, you can even say the first machine gun, the Gatling gun.
Yes, I've heard people call the Gatling gun the grandfather of the minigun, because they both work on the same premise: rotating barrels, each firing a shot within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
To say nothing, of course, as well about mining, as I understand. Again, I'm limited in my knowledge of the Civil War.
Oh, yes, the mining.
Raider was basically doing the same exact thing that the Allies tried to do in multiple campaigns during the First World War, which is, we dig under their lines, we place a bunch of explosives,
yes,
we blow it up, and then it'll work out. And then it doesn't always work out because it's a big old hole we run into. But we'll sort it out when we get there, I'm sure.
White Union soldiers.
See it coming, don't worry.
Yeah, the Battle of the Crater was definitely a ouch on the Union side. The thought was sound. They just didn't dig far enough.
Well, and that's oftentimes the case with these sorts of things is, they have an excellent concept, but it's never been tried before. You are trying to figure out how to fight a modern war on the fly.
Yeah,
so you can't really blame it's the calculation was a little bit off. Well, yeah, there's hardly a precedent for it.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, so, this guy in the past did this. Let's use his idea and see where we can find the fault in his tactic and improve on it. No, it was, I got an idea. Probably won't work, but let's try it.
And imagine, coming completely out of the blue from a military tradition where you are basically just worshiping at the altar of Napoleon. And you have this one guy walk up all right, well, so they have a really strong line. Here's an idea. What if we dig underneath it and blow it up?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's a sound idea, but it's crazy. It's out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, the same exact thing in the Napoleonic Wars, the British had these genuine fears, popularly, not in terms of the government, but in terms of the lower classes, the uneducated masses. They were genuinely scared in a lot of propaganda pieces and whatnot that newspapers would publish, that the French were going to dig underneath the English Channel, and that they were going to send airships, so that they're going to get massive weather balloons, load of battalions of soldiers, and then float across the Channel, and then the Navy will be useless. It's well, that's pretty stupid, but it's untried territory. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to scare children with.
Yeah, to be sure, the French are going to come and fall from the sky.
Did you do your chores? But then
you have the issue of the crater, because it wasn't just those things. It was also the biggest reason, in my opinion, is the political reasons, because that is a sound strategy. And Burnside, it would have worked, but the issue was that in Washington, Lincoln was kind of scared of this plan because originally they were supposed to use black soldiers, and they were the only soldiers in the entire Army of the Potomac that were trained for this. And they're supposed to be going in first. Well, because of political issues, because they feared that sending in them first would just have a massive political backlash, sending in these black soldiers to just get slaughtered.
Yeah.
So they had to switch it to white soldiers, and these guys were not trained. So right as the Confederate line is blown to smithereens, they just charge into the hole because they're not trained for it.
Yeah.
And so they just get massacred by the Confederates.
So when you say that the black soldiers were trained, what were they trained in?
They were trained because what happened was that they were told, okay, we're going to train you how to do this. What you're going to try to do is, because it was such a massive hole, and there's going to be obviously smoke and dust everywhere. You're not going to see anything. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to tell you when to avoid the hole, because they're supposed to run around it and then hit the Confederate line.
Like before the actual battle, these guys were being drilled what the plan was.
Yeah, but the issue was is that it wasn't just that. So when the Federal soldiers ran in there, this hole was so massive is that you couldn't even like climb because you just fall back down. And like it was just like a mosh pit. The worst part was is that you have the Confederates on top shooting down at you.
Mm-hmm.
And the Federals were utterly horrified that the Confederates managed to organize so quickly. That so you basically, because I thought that the Confederates would be stunned immediately and they wouldn't have the time to organize. Well, out of nowhere, here comes hundreds of Confederate regiments charging forwards and just blasting the Federals. And the Confederates just called it a turkey shoot.
Yes.
Like you couldn't miss a man.
I think one of the big reasons that the Confederates were able to mobilize so fast was their trench network itself during the Battle of the Crater, because the Battle of the Crater took place right in the middle of a Confederate trench. So they could quite literally have men funneling in from many other parts of the trench, climbing out of the trench, getting on top of the hill, and firing down amongst them. That's just
like in the scene in the movie Cold Mountain.
Cold Mountain.
When the first opening scenes that you see the Confederate trenches and they've been blown up, and it shows you just how brutal that fighting was. You legit have men stepping on each other and men drowning in the mud because it's so cramped.
It was definitely one of the big fails of Burnside's plans, just like the attack on Fredericksburg and those pontoon bridges. Dear God. If he would have let Hancock march, have his troops go into Fredericksburg during that battle, before it all went down, I guarantee you that the outcome would have been a lot different. The Confederacy probably would have still won it because they had that stone wall, but I believe that the casualties would have been a lot higher, I should say.
Another thing that people don't talk about Fredericksburg is on the left side where Meade pushed right through where Jackson's men were, on the left side of Fredericksburg. Because what happened is that Meade, who has probably the smallest division, only a couple thousand men, he manages to punch right through Stonewall Jackson's line on the left. And what happens when Meade tells one of the Federal corps to come right in and help him? Guess what the commander says? No.
No, he got it.
Yeah, he basically said, I take my orders from I'm in another corps, you're in a different corps, I have a different commander, you got a different commander, I don't need to listen to you. In fact, it was recorded that Meade rode there by himself and he cursed this guy for hours. Because Meade was known to have a very, very, very short temper. In fact, one Union soldier described it as that he was cursing so harshly and so loudly that not even the stones would want to be near him.
Yeah, Meade was definitely a temperate commander.
Oh, you cut out, I think.
He was a very temperate commander. He was not a man to be trifled with.
No.
Oftentimes the best ones are exactly that way.
Another little fun fact, though, about General Grant: could not stand the sight of blood.
Really?
Yes.
Yep. Hated blood. Hated uniforms, too.
Yes, in Georgetown, Ohio, his boyhood home. I've been there. It is absolutely beautiful. You start in the original house, and if you look over in the corner to the right, as soon as you enter the house, you can even see the original hole where they would carry the children, him, his brother, and his sister, up and down the ladder to put them to bed. And which is often scary to think about, because one slip from his mother and there would have been no Grant. That's
what if scenarios you have to ask yourself how the world would be different?
Yeah, it's just one
like if there's no Robert E. Lee.
One wrongly timed sneeze. Well, there goes another one. And you get and they even have some of his brother's original books, and none of their original beds because they didn't survive. And it's really neat to look at. And they even have his father's beaver skin top hat, their original couches, and right across the way was the tannery that his father owned and operated, and that is what gave Grant his hatred of blood, was that tannery.
Oh,
and also
from all the deer and such animals.
Yes, I think it was. They a lot of times they use horses because how strong Horsehide is.
Okay, yeah.
And he also had a huge love of horses. There wasn't a single horse that he met that he couldn't ride. And he also Ulysses S. Grant was not his true name.
Was it Ulysses?
It was Hiram Ulysses Grant. His first name is Hiram.
But the Army, of course, spelled it a little wrong. So,
well, what happened was his brother was a strong believer in free education. So when it came time to go to West Point, him and his brother basically scrapped it out. He told Grant, "Hey, you're going to college." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, you're not." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "Fine, I'll go." So when he finally gets in that appointment to West Point, he always went by Ulysses. He never went by Hiram. And with that, people thought, common in that time, the middle name was your mother's maiden names. So it was believed that his middle name was, I think,
That stood for Simpson.
Simpson, yes. So people thought his name was Ulysses Simpson Grant. So when he got to West Point, he went up there and he said, and the man at the desk said, "Are you Ulysses S. Grant?" And he said, "No, my name is Hiram. There must be a mistake." And the guy basically looked at him and said, "The Army doesn't make mistakes. Your name is Ulysses S. Grant. Do you want this opportunity or not?" And so he was like, "Yeah." So he was like, "I'm Ulysses S. Grant."
Well, this is my name now.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went. He's just like, "This is your name. Do you want it or not?" "Okay."
I'll take it. I remember when I first did reenacting, I didn't usually have things to do on the school days, but now I can do my most favorite thing on school days: teaching the children the rebel yell.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Actually,
you've seen that video of the veterans in like the 20s doing the rebel yell.
Oh yeah, trust me, those children never expected it.
Now,
I had this one group of about 100 high schoolers. They were all talking like, "All right, I'm gonna get ready," and so I did my yell. And they're like, "Oh!" And they finally paid attention. They got rid of all their phones. I'm like, "That's what I thought."
I've had to use my revolver a couple times to get some kids' attention, which is, you always know which ones it's going to be. It's always the ones in the back that are looking around. Just like, "Man, this place blows." Well, all of a sudden you burn some powder and everybody's instantly fixed.
That's what I did. I did the rebel yell and then fire off my rifle, and they're like, "Oh!"
I was always on weapons demonstration.
Oh yeah, one of my friends does that after he's done with my thing.
Which I'm glad I can now add a 62 to the weapons demonstration. Can I fire a musket cap? Yes, I can. I will fire a musket cap. General, you asked me last live stream, and I promised I'd do it.
Don't hurt yourself.
I've only ever done one school day at an event, which I want to do more. They're a lot of fun, I think.
It's important to teach the children.
Yeah. Remember, actually, when I went to one, it was a while back when I was still in Ohio with the 23rd. I was the only redcoat to actually show up for the school day. So it was at like an actual fort. And so they put all the Continentals and the militia and everything inside the fort. And like, "All right, redcoat, you want to like stand at the gate and like, I don't know, do something with them." Like, all right. So I taught them drill. So I had like and it was like young kids too. It was like fifth graders and lower. So I would have them line up and I marched them back and forth and I taught them through like the facings and the firing positions and the charge bayonets. And I even got one of them, like the older kids, to wheel at one point, which was very impressive, I thought. But it was all good fun.
Brandon, I have a request from chat, which is, "Tell the celebrity I said hi." Brady Triple O says hi.
Well, I say hello back, Brady. Hello. But that's a bit much, I think. I make videos on the internet. That's
Videos.
A good
He
question
loves
from
making the
Shemley.
videos.
A very good question from Shemley. When you do reenactments, do you actually try to do what the battle was, or do you try to win the battle? It all depends on the reenactment. If it is just a mock battle of what could have happened, sometimes it's we let the commanders butt heads. Who's the better tactician? But let's say it's something for Gettysburg or Fredericksburg or Antietam, then we do our best to go along with what actually happened.
Yeah, or one of Brandon's reenactments, Monmouth, and some others.
Yeah, it's much the same way in Rev War. Sometimes it's a tactical. Sometimes, it is left up to question as far as who is better at positioning the men and things like that. More often than not, with most of the public events, if they aren't based off of an actual historical battle, it'll be a matter of like, okay, well, the British will win on Saturday and the rebels will win on Sunday.
Very much, yes. Same thing.
And there's like a rough scripting as far as like, okay, so the rebels are coming out of this position, they push forward and they drive the British back over here, and then the British will push them back. Like, the rough outline is laid out and predetermined, but what happens within that is a bit more open to interpretation and improv. That is the way that I normally describe reenactment to people. Is don't think of it like a game. It's not a sport. It is an improv performance.
Yes, we are all...
Because it's not a matter of who wins and who, quote-unquote, loses the reenactment. It's a matter of putting on a good show for the public that is educational and entertaining.
Yeah,
the entire point.
Yes.
The best way I've heard being explained as what a reenactor does, we are all just actors in a big play.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
True.
let's
We're
fire
here to
this
give
musket
out a
cap.
good show.
Mm-hmm. And even if you know what's going to happen, like even if you're thinking, oh, okay, we lose today, that doesn't mean that it's not fun or that it like loses that sense of chaos and awe and wonderment that you can find when you're in the field. I mean, if anything, I actually kind of prefer when I know that like, okay, the British are going to have their last stand and we all die today, because then it makes it a lot more like intense as far as, people are falling all around, like people are more willing to take the casualties because, we lose today, so it makes sense to do so. Like it makes it all look, it makes it look better, and when it looks better, it usually feels better as well.
Yeah, that reminds me of one event when we were in Jefferson, Texas, and it was kind of like what you said, Brandon, a last stand, because we were doing a recreation of the Great Locomotive Chase. But instead of Union soldiers taking a Confederate train, we were Confederates taking a Yankee train. And we were on the last stand, and so everyone's dying all over me. I'm the last one. I'm like, I just jump off of the train. I shoot my rifle, run back, reload. All of a sudden, there's a blind Union soldier shooting me. I die, and then they put me and two others up against a tree and execute us on the track.
Oh, fun.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
No, I mean, some of the best experiences that I've ever had at reenactments have been the ones that were like completely scripted. Like I knew exactly what was going to happen before it happened, but still, that experience was, incredible. Like one of my favorite events I've ever been to was the Battle of Stony Point. And in the real Battle of Stony Point, General Mad Anthony Wayne, an American light infantry commander, basically took this British fort on top of a giant hill completely by surprise, because basically the hill is like very well naturally guarded. Like there's only one real natural approach to the area. So the British obviously put all their defenses and their pickets and everything in that spot, because obviously if an enemy is going to be stupid enough to attack this fort, they're going to attack it from this angle. What else are you going to do? Scale up this like really steep cliff and then like try and, come through all the brush and the debris and everything? Well, it turns out that's exactly what they did. Anthony Wayne and his light infantry basically stormed this fort sometime like late in the night from a surprise angle, and they overran it completely. They captured not only like a couple, like whatever, a large number of men inside, but also the women and children who were with the regiment, and it was a big old disaster for the British Army. And so at the reenactment, obviously we were doing it during the day because, reenactment, public safety and all that. But the first day, the 54th, we were at the base of this hill, just kind of hanging out in, like in camp or whatever, in like an open formation, just, not doing anything in particular. And all of a sudden, hey, what's that over there? And we see like this massive line, because all the Americans were dressed the same way because they are portraying light infantry, so they were all wearing their light infantry frocks. Also, we see this giant line of white like coming up this hill, like, sound the assembler, like, so the rolling of the drum, and we all run to try and get ready, and we fire off like one volley against them, and they're prime and load, and then as we're reloading, the Americans just charge, like, they don't even bother firing us. They get into a close quarters, and they just take off running towards us, and so we all break, without even orders.
Yeah.
We all just run away.
Run away!
And we get chased down by this veritable wave of rebel light infantrymen washing over the camp. They're all dressed the same way. They're all screaming bloody murder. They all actually had bayonets fixed to their guns, which wasn't entirely planned, but that's beside the point. And I remember running forward and taking one glance back behind me as they were washing over, and turns out the guys that were right behind me, I knew them. They were from the 5th Connecticut, which is another group down in Connecticut that does Continental, among other things. And they noticed me, so they start shouting out, "Batman there! Get Batman!" And so they like, no!
Please show me mercy.
It was one of the coolest experiences I've had, is watching that wave wash over us, because it felt so real, even though I literally knew everything that was going to happen from the very beginning. Still, being able to actually experience it, that's what it's all about. It's not a matter of the tactical, making sure that we're winning over the other side. Like basically all the fun experience I have reenactment. Usually I know it's going to happen, and usually it's me dying or losing in some way. But that's the fun of it.
Oh, we got another good question. What was the scariest thing you saw at a reenactment? I'd actually like to take point on this one. The scariest thing I've ever experienced at a reenactment was getting shot at by a modern day rifle. And there's actually a good story behind this. It was at Fort Randolph. Brandon, you might be familiar with that fort. It was a Revolutionary War fort.
It sounds familiar. I'll look it up here, but yeah, carry on.
And we were doing everyone around the fort knew what we were doing. And that we were doing a night battle, which people were used to the gunfire, all throughout the night, because they do hold Revolutionary War reenactments there.
Wait, hold on. Is this in Wheeling, West Virginia?
Point Pleasant.
All right, never mind. Carry on. Sorry.
And this guy and some combat veterans out on the field heard whizzing by their head, and they said that they were all too familiar with that sound. Some man on top of the hill behind the fort was firing down at us with a modern day rifle.
Jeez.
And this is when we kind of got angry and were out for more, okay, we're going to settle this right here and now. Because I haven't been around too many Revolutionary War reenactors, but Civil War reenactors can get pretty ornery. We can get, if need be, we can get extremely mean. And this guy was firing at us, so then these headlights pull up. Well, a lot of us thought that he came down on his side-by-side. And I look around, I see infantry fixing bayonets. I drew my saber, like, this dude probably has another gun with him. And I'm not taking that chance of him hurting my friends. Well, they opened up the gates, it was the police.
Good.
So it instantly went from, let's go get this guy, to, oh, that is a nice bayonet. Where'd you get that?
Where'd you get that bayonet?
That's that story, but to satisfy the general, I am going to now fire the musket cap.
Yeah, that's it. The same thing happened to me. But this time, I nearly got injured.
Fire in the hole.
So what happened was that we were in Pleasant Hill, Louisiana, which was an actual battlefield during the Civil War, during the Red River campaign. It's called Pleasant Hill, but we were doing the town part of the battle because it lasted for a few days. And what happened was that when we were in the town battle in the town of Mansfield, we were supposed to be the Confederate vanguard, and we were advancing to the town where the Federals were supposed to be. Well, we didn't see any Federals up until they out of nowhere came from the buildings, and they proceeded to fire and then charge at us. Well, they had bayonets on, and they were not aiming them on in the air. They were legit aiming them at us. And I'm like, oh dear God. And one of them nearly came close to stabbing me. I'm like, if you stabbed me, I'm good. And if you killed me, I'm gonna haunt you from the grave. Sorry. I'm like, you're not even supposed to fix bayonets in the first place, mate.
Yeah.
Especially considering if you're aiming at an actual person.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've ever seen bayonets fixed
That's
at a
basically
reenactment is during
reenacting
stack
breaking
rifles.
rules 101.
Yeah, the only time I ever see bayonets get put on is whether one, it's something that both sides have planned out, and it's, let's say, moving prisoners. Even then, you'll see guys holding their rifles backwards like this, hammer towards them just to keep the bayonets away. These are mainly for aesthetics
or at the shoulder. Never lower it at someone else.
Yeah,
it's not worth it.
Or because you might injure or kill someone.
Or stacking rifles. One of the most unsafe things I've ever seen was a Confederate unit here in Ohio actually aim their bayonets at the public.
Oh no!
And apparently the trademark was they fix their bayonets and they point them at the public. They charge bayonets at the publics and they just start marching at them very slowly. Well, I thought of an idea and I told my commander, I was like, we just won the battle. I say while they're doing that, we get in between them and the public as sort of like a vanguard. And by the time he got done working it out, they had already finished their skit. And I'm just like, dang, that would have been cool if we just, got in between. I'm like, hey, no. I'll admit, it was partially for, to help us look good. But at the same time, it was, I want to put someone who is part of the hobby who knows the risks, not someone in between them and someone who came along to see people burn powder and watch a battle.
Yeah.
That was my main thought.
Do you guys do any other time periods? I was going to ask.
I've wanted to maybe step into I was thinking maybe World War I or so, but I also don't feel like I fit in there.
Why do you say that?
I feel because I feel like Civil War reenacting is where I need to be.
All right, that's fair enough.
That's I just have a call to the Civil War reenacting, and that's where I need to stay.
All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I remember because I also had another interest. I was thinking of also doing Rev War, but the issue was that because the first time I saw an opportunity was one of our old corporals before he left and he made his own unit. He was in a British unit in Texas. I can't remember. I think they were Grenadier. I think, but they were they asked for some new members, and we said okay. But then I said, well, I'm going to stick for Civil War for now, just because doing two different time periods is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And the fact right now we don't really have the cash, so I'll just stick with the one for now.
Fair enough.
Yeah, buying another set of uniform, another rifle, and all kinds of different things.
Yeah. What's the old saying? If you want your kid to stay off drugs, get them into reenacting.
Oh yeah, that meme.
I've heard that too. Yeah, I've heard that too.
No more money and no more time for it at that point.
Hey man,
and if they have secret money, take it away from them.
Yeah. Hey man, you want to buy some drugs? Sorry, dude, I'm buying a musket.
Yeah. I was gonna say that the only the biggest safety violations have never been in Rev War, but I have seen some really bad stuff in primarily in World War II reenactment. In World War I, I've never experienced a very big safety violation, but I've been at events where things have gone wrong. Actually, at the last Newville event, very unfortunately, one individual, forgot what group he was with, but got his leg pretty much just cut open pretty dramatically on some barbed wire.
Oh.
Because they use actual barbed wire at that site. We also we fire actual projectiles with mortars and such. So you have to always have your helmet on with you. All of the events are 1916 or beyond because there are actual mortars falling from up above. There are actual smoke grenades and whatnot. and for the most part, it is a matter of just making sure that you're aware of your surroundings and whatnot. But sometimes things can happen on accident. The guy was fine, of course. He just had to get to a hospital and get some stitches put in, and a new pair of trousers, unfortunately, because it cut right through them. But in World War II, I have seen, particularly with the one site in Youngstown, Ohio, the Stalingrad event.
Ura tovarishi.
Ura.
I didn't know that.
A lot of the biggest problem with that, the biggest problem is people blind fire on corners, or going and peeling off a couple of rounds without realizing that someone is close by, and you can damage hearing and whatnot pretty badly. But otherwise, those guys, a lot of them are just crazy. They do, in the most delightful way, of course. I mean that complimentary. Melee combat and whatnot in the Stalingrad event is very common, and as someone who goes there usually as a photographer, I love it because I get incredible footage from that event. But even then, the melee combat's always between two people that know each other, and they actually would tell us after the fact, oftentimes they're having a conversation while they're wrestling on the ground, hey, I'm gonna smash your head in with my helmet, is that okay? Hey, I'm gonna choke you, is that okay? All these different little things, which, if not in a reenactment context, would sound very, very strange. But there's always safety precautions to be taken, even with things like that.
Yeah, I remember one time kind of like that. Ooh, Red. Should I tell Brandon that story about that one unit and that one colonel?
Oh, the 16. Yeah. Oh, Brandon, you're gonna love this. This is when Civil War reenacting is we're trying to cut this part of reenacting out. We don't want these people.
Yeah, I can't remember what his name is, but I don't know how this guy got to a colonel and led a unit. So before I ever joined reenacting, there was, and I never knew this but until I did join for the first time in the 9th Texas at a place called the Endo Plantation. I heard about this guy in our second event, which was at a place called Blackjack Grove. So what happened is that there's this guy who's named Morgan, and his unit, we usually call them Morgan's A-hole Brigade. And the reason why is because they are quite the a-holes, and no one likes them. The first example, Pleasant Hill. They did 4 to 3 things that got them banned from Pleasant Hill, ever. No longer going to that event because they're banned permanently from the town. The first time. Now this was kind of understandable considering they're more an authentic and campaigner unit, but still it's kind of stupid. They decided, instead of using the flat ground, the beautiful flat land, they decided to camp inside the forest and basically do everything, make their own, get their own food, basically forage and such, which is understandable, but The second thing, and the worst part is that they basically, when everyone suggested them to camp on the flat ground, they just basically said, F all of you, and they even said that to the organizers of the event, which is something you should never do, saying F you to the organizers of an event.
Not very
Yeah.
Do that. Never do that. If you want to never do that.
Yeah, or you're going to make some enemies. Second thing, they proceeded to fire off their rifles and pistols in the middle of the night, at 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock at night. And everyone's trying to sleep, by the way, and everyone legit, both the Confederates and the Federals, legit said, how about we just go in the forest and beat the crap out of them?
Understandable reaction. Oh.
The third thing is that they did.
He's in the restroom. Give him 1 second.
The third thing that they did was, of course,
I told Grandma you're in the bathroom. So
the third thing they did was they didn't go to the battle, and they avoided officers' call, and they had their own little fight. That got them banned. The last thing was at Jefferson, where instead of being sensible, because this was in summertime, it was about 115 degrees. And so the people of the town allowed us to ride our vehicles to the fields because we're not stupid. And it was about a 30-minute march. What happens is that we met Morgan's guys who were marching to the field in all their accoutrements in the 115 degrees. They proceeded to tell us to F off when we gave them a ride, when we offered to give them a ride. Only one guy had sense.
Nice.
Yeah, those are the reenactors that we're just like, we don't want you anymore. You can, you can.
I'll be right
away.
back. I gotta go to church. I'll be back in a few hours.
Oh, okay. I have a story from chat. Unless Matt, you have a story you want to share.
I don't think I do have one where everything was followed for safety, but because they were trying to be safe, it almost cost the guy's life. It was at the Gettysburg reenactment back in 2016. There was a Union artillery unit who was firing off a cannon, doing everything by the book. They were loading another shot in, and this guy, he rams the shot in. The shot detonates with the rammer going all the way across the field and nearly impaling a Union soldier in the stomach.
Jeez.
Ooh.
It got near the guy, didn't kill him, almost did. The ambulance got on the field and just took him away. Like he was messed up.
I got a story in chat here from General Nofi or Nofi. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I butcher names like a butcher butchers a hog. He says, "Okay, so I reenacted the 9th Pennsylvania Reserves, and there's one guy that has a food container-sized box filled with black powder. First of all, never keep your black powder in a Tupperware container.
Yeah.
You'll just get it wet and end up with oatmeal at one point. And he was smoking a cigar, and the lid was open, and an ember dropped in, and it went up in flames. He got 2-degree burns. His tent was set ablaze. Oh,
yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I do have a wooden box that I use as my footlocker, but all my black powder is kept in their individual containers.
I usually keep... Oh, go ahead, Brandon, sorry.
No, carry on.
No, you're the guest, come on.
Oh, so the 54th, we usually have all the powder in one central location. Our leader, Mr. Steve Gardner, he has like a great big like military grade, sealed container type thing. I forgot what it's made out of. But it's like it's an actual ammunition box, like steel or whatever, that we keep our powder, and we have a couple of those that we keep powder in. So that way, we always keep it sealed and everything, and then individual bits of powder, usually like 30 cartridges are in individual plastic bags. So a couple of things basically would have to go wrong in order for that to, go up.
Yeah. I have been at events where the powder they have given us is so rough, like not coarse enough to actually go into our rifles. Like, we've gone to fire it, and all we get is percussion cap. I've also been at events where some guys have had powder that didn't even give it a boom; it gave it like a f as it fired. That was exactly the noise it made. It was f. Which I kind of got mad at these guys because I was playing a wounded man and I was crawling, and they were leveling their rifles over me. And it wouldn't have been so bad if it was actual powder pushing out, but the fact that it was going, "Fih," I was really nervous. In the Rev War community up here in New England, the National Park Service is kind of notorious for having very strict regulations as far as like what you can do and such. And usually they will provide with certain events, at least, so certain sites, like they'll provide you with cartridges, and their cartridges are incredibly weak. Like the 54th usually uses like 100 to 120 grains of powder in our cartridges. Wow.
They'll give you like 60. And then now keep in mind as well that with flintlock musketry, you're both priming and loading with that powder. So about 20 of those grains are going to go inside the pan of the musket, and then the rest is going to go down the barrel of the gun. They're also much larger caliber. So with percussion cap, you get like a real cracking noise when you fire those things.
Yeah, you get
with a musket. If it's a blank round, it's much more of a swamping noise.
Now, how many shots do you think you could get off a minute with no order, just you loading and firing on your own time?
Live rounds?
Yes. No, not live rounds, just reenacting.
Oh, just reenactment. Probably 4. That's
I don't mean to brag, but with my Sharps carbine, because it is a breech load, I can get off maybe 8 shots a minute.
Nice.
I am one of the me and a buddy of mine. We always have a competition at events when given fire at will, who can get off the most shots.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
So he and I, we're easily the fastest shots. There's even been times like our sergeants walked over and be like, "All right, you two slow it down."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like, firing blank with a musket, like, you would be hard-pressed still to get 6 if you're actually, like, if you're not, like, ridiculously over or under priming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the parade standard as far as live firing historically was between 3 and 4 rounds every minute. The effective battle standard was more like 2 to 3 rounds every minute, usually 2.
Which wasn't the normal, how should I say, tactic of the British Army? Wasn't it fighting in twos?
Yeah, they pretty much for the majority of the war, actually through the Napoleonic War as well, they were in 2 ranks and in open order. In Rev War, at least, they're always in open order. They are usually running around at the trail. They are, in fact, running on the battlefield, which is very rare for that time period because normally, generally speaking, you don't want to run because it disrupts formations. But one of the biggest dynamics about the Rev War is that, there aren't as many people running around those battlefields. Very small battles, like, skirmish size is like the largest battles in the Rev War, like when it comes to comparing to Civil War. And there's no like heavy cavalry presence, so you can use open order formations. You can be a lot more light and agile and whatnot. So yeah, no, oftentimes like the favorite, as it were, strategy is tactic, I should say. You run up, you fire a single volley. You have both ranks fire at the same time, firing at them. Charge bayonets and then push them.
Interesting. Now, do you guys do the command fire by file?
I've heard it before. Fire by file. That is where every individual, like the men pair off and one man fires while one's reloading. Is that it? Or
it is. Let's say you and I were in files of 2.
Mm-hmm.
Fire by file. I was behind you. You were in front on one knee. It would be, they would call it, if from the left, fire by file from the left, 2-second intervals. The man to our left fires, 1, 2, we fire. That, I disagree with that reenactments because the whole point of it was to have a constant rate of fire because it's supposed to be by the time the man on the end fires, the first 2 are supposed to be reloaded.
Yeah.
It
has happened, like, we've used it, like, in ceremonial things and whatnot. I don't like it either. It doesn't usually look very good, I don't think. As far as in a battle, I've never heard of it being used, that kind of thing. Now, street firing did exist, which was under the same principle of supplying continuous fire, and it's when you're dealing with, narrow quarters, street firing, quite literally. And that is a system by which if you are in a column of 2s, is what it'd be called. So, or column of 3, column of 4, whatever. Column of 2 is most common because they're doing 2 ranks. The front 2 men in that column, they fire, and then they retire to the rear of the column. The next 2 men fire, they retire, fire, retire, that sort of thing. And as well, you could have firing by platoon or firing by subdivision, also called a company, firing by, whatever the formation is to keep up that continuous fire. But more often than not, there is not a situation in Rev War where you really have to keep up continuous fire. The numbers are a lot smaller. The all the formations are very, very open. It's much more a matter of, fire and then run somewhere, get to where you need to go. Rapid moving, light infantry strategies, that was much more favored, so to say. Again, there's always exceptions. Obviously, there's always exceptions. It was a very long war. But, a lot more independent firing would have been common during the conflict. And, even in fairness, in like the Napoleonic Wars and such, and much larger conflicts, even firing by ranks, usually, I should say volley firing, because, you don't need to fire by rank. You can have 3 ranks firing while standing. Even firing by volleys, more often than not, after really just even 1 or 2 of those volleys, the formation breaks down and men begin firing just as they load independently. That's usually the case. It's very rare for, disciplined volley after disciplined volley to carry on in very long form effort. It just, things become too chaotic for all of that.
Yeah. Let's see. Ooh, Noah wants someone to explain chain shot because he wants to use it in a book. Easy. Chain shot was used by the Navy, and it was, Brandon, you correct me if I'm wrong here. it was used to destroy the masts and sails of the enemy ship so that they could no longer move and were basically a stationary target.
Yeah, there's also something very similar to that is bar shot, which is basically just chain shot, but with a solid bar between the two balls instead of chain. Yeah, you not only can take out and like tear holes in enemy masts and whatnot, you get it caught up in the enemy's rigging and tear that stuff down. It can possibly, because it forms a much wider angle, it can be used to tear into an enemy the actual mast and maybe snap yards and whatnot. I don't know naval terminology, but basically, yeah, you're doing damage to the actual sailing mechanism of the ship. I feel like I read somewhere about a situation where it was used in land combat. I don't know. Like theoretically, it's possible you can.
Yes.
And possibly it did happen, but the thing is, when it comes to like that, and when it comes to things like explosive shot and whatnot, they were nowhere near as common as film often tries to portray them as being, because of course it's a lot harder to transport and everything. And they're a lot more difficult to manufacture as well. Round shot is the most common.
Yes.
A single iron ball that you lob towards the enemy, like throwing a great big rock at them.
Yeah, that was both.
Oh, and he says, I mean firing from right to left. I don't know the name for it. Oh, so not like the actual chain shot in a cannon, but firing technique. I think that's,
okay.
That's what Red was describing earlier as firing by files.
Yeah, firing by file.
Unless you can be firing as well by different formations. So if you have, individuals firing, down the line, that's firing by files. If you're having one like section of the line fire and then another, it could be again firing by platoons or firing by subdivision, firing by whatever. Yeah.
Often enough, you wouldn't hear fire by file from the right, because that would be the general assumption where you're firing from. There's only two commands. It was fire by file or fire by file from the left. That one you hear most common as to get more word out for the order. Like I said earlier, me personally, I don't like it, because the whole idea was that you have at least, because let's say we're in a battle. We all do fire by file with only 6 guys. So 3 files. It's fairly hard to reload a musket with 2-second intervals, so a total of 4 seconds. Even with percussion rifles, it is hard to reload in 4 seconds. And the whole idea was that you always had one person loaded, because if you have no one loaded, that enemy is going to advance at a rapid pace.
Yeah, then you may as well just fire by volley at that point.
Yeah, which I also, unless you have multiple regiments or companies, I don't like, because like I said, you're leaving yourself open, and it just doesn't look good when you fire and then everybody's reloading on their own, and some people are faster at the load than others. So then they load and they have to come to the shoulder, and they're just standing there while the enemy is shooting at them.
One of the biggest things that I hate at reenactment, and so many groups do this, and I'm becoming an officer soon, and when I become an officer, I'm not going to let this happen.
Well, from one officer to another?
We wait. Like, there's always one guy in the regiment, there's always one guy in the company who's taken his time with the loading, and you have an entire company of men, at the recover. They're ready to fire.
They're wanting to let that powder fly.
Waiting for it. We're like, no, they're charging you.
Yes.
Fire at them. I don't care if you were waiting for Timmy over there in the corner to load. He can get the next volley. Shoot them.
Brandon, with the news that you are becoming an officer, welcome, sir. Welcome to the Brotherhood.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
What are you being
promoted
to?
A lieutenant in His Majesty's 54th.
Wonderful, wonderful. Are you going to be now? What? This is where I get interesting, because I've always found the different loadouts. What would an officer of the 54th be issued? Would he have a pistol, or would he just carry his sword with him?
So,
what would he be issued?
Honestly, this is the kind of thing that I should probably make a video about, because so many people assume that officers in the 18th century all were walking around with a pistol and a sword. And I think it's because of later time periods in, the Civil War, like the Victorian era, when, having a revolver would be kind of a standard. Like, it's a sidearm, the idea of a sidearm.
Would you like to see a revolver?
Not really a thing in Rev War. cavalrymen could have pistols with them because they have like usually these like bearskin covered holsters and whatnot on a saddle. But an officer in the field, the idea is in Rev War, for example, what I will be carrying, I will likely carry a sword, and I will carry something called a fusee, which is just a smaller musket, basically. I will never fire that fusee. I am carrying it as a sign of status. I am carrying it as a gentleman. I am also carrying it for Rev War to blend in a little bit more with the regular men, so I don't stand out as much as an officer.
Gotcha.
Because the Americans were known to take people out. But if I ever fire that weapon, if I'm ever firing that fusee, then something has gone wrong.
Yes.
I'm an officer.
That is.
I just show the orders to the men. I am not there to get my hands dirty.
That is one of the things that, as you see in chat, General Kautz, I have mentioned to him that I want to get a LeMat revolver. Are you familiar with this firearm?
Vaguely.
It is a 9-shot revolver with a 20 gauge shotgun on the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, it's like a shotgun basically, because in one side of the pistol, you have something called buckshot, which is like an early kind of shotgun ammo. Which on the inside it has a big musket ball, kind of like your Yalls, with a round ball, and it has tiny little balls. So when you fire it, it spreads like a buckshot.
Yeah, there's the same thing actually in Rev War. So they had buck.
Same reason as carrying what I would deem in the Civil War as a carbine is what you would be carrying. I want to carry that as a sign of pristine. And if being on general staff, we are going to be nowhere near the fighting. So if in any case, me alone on general staff have to use that, we have severely messed up.
Yeah, like something has gone wrong if you were having to fight people as the adjutant.
Yes, and I am definitely going to deserve whatever is coming my way. Because not only have I let, the general down, I have let my men down, not being able to organize them in an orderly fashion to repel the attack.
Yeah, so like in Rev War, I mean, an officer as a gentleman, would probably own a pistol or two, but they're not carrying those with them in the field. There's no standard by which an officer would carry a pistol. There is no policy or rule anywhere to suggest that they should be doing that. They might have one if they're mounted and they can keep it in a holster, but for the most part, no. An officer is going around with a sword, potentially a fusee, and later on, in later time periods, junior officers might have like a halberd with them or something like that. But that was gotten rid of in the Rev War because it was impractical and whatnot. They changed out those long pole arms with fusees just because they blend in and it can be practical if the situation arises. I'll probably also have a bayonet with me for that fusee. I might carry a cartridge box, although I understand that sometimes officers would, sometimes they wouldn't. And then I'll get a pair of. I'll get a pair of nicer shoes with black gaiters, ones I pretty much already have, or I will get what are they called? Like ankle high boots. I forgot they're called, like lacing up boots. Rather modern looking, but it is period.
I know what you're talking about. The name escapes me.
Yeah. I do want to get a wig as well. Not because officers would be wearing wigs like in the battlefield, but because I want to make sure that my hair is done up in a way that is appropriate for a gentleman. So I want to have, the curls and a queue in the back, my natural hair color.
Now, what would the sword have looked like? I'm sorry, I'm a stickler for weaponry. I find it interesting.
No, it's fine.
I'm even tempted to go to my closet and get a couple things. And actually, one moment while I go and get my sword. So maybe we can sort of do a comparison.
Yeah. I need to get myself a webcam so I can do similar things with my own live streams and whatnot.
Which you can ask anybody on the channel right now. Red is very fond of showing off his weaponry.
Oh yeah, he is.
Especially my Scottish Claymore, which is very beautiful.
Ah.
Yeah, I'll show you that one if you wish later. If we're going to stay on this, if you want to chat on Discord some more later.
All right. Yeah.
Now this sword right here is a 1850s staff and field Union officer's sword. The sheath is blurred steel with the brass fittings, and I also have a gold sword knot to establish that I am in fact an officer. Now in combat, maybe not have worn this because it can get in the way, flopping around everywhere.
Mhm.
But being
Yeah.
on general staff, definitely have one to distinguish myself.
Mhm.
The handle is leather wrapped with brass wiring. Now, this is funny. They used sealskin to wrap these in the Civil War. Back when clubbing seals was okay.
Yeah.
And the blade is highly decorated. Let me see if my light in the back here can show it off. You can see the markings along the blade. It was highly decorated.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yes. Oh, I've been dying to get one of these, especially blades. I'm a stickler for blades. I'm a collector. It is. So, in what ways? I'm guessing that the sword probably would have been straight.
Well, so a lot of variants, actually, because the thing is about the British military during this time period is that sort of thing isn't really regulated. That's not regulated by, His Majesty's service. It's not regulated by horse guards. It's being regulated by the colonels of individual regiments.
Oh.
So there may well be a regiment in which the colonel doesn't care. He's like, officers, buy whatever swords you want. And there's a variety. However, much more common would have been the case that the colonel of the regiment cared about how his regiment looks, and he wanted to make sure that his officers wore uniform. It's not a uniformity being imposed by the army, it's a uniformity being imposed by the colonel of the regiment according to the fashion of the time period. Most common for lower junior officers would have been sabers and whatnot, like infantry sabers, fairly simple things. Infantry hangers and whatnot as well. Actually, there's an awful lot of advices. I actually have a copy right next to me here. In his A System for the Complete Interior Management and Economy of a Battalion of Infantry by Bennett Cuthbertson, TLDR, it's a great big old guide on how you manage your infantry battalion, because, that's something that colonels have to do is manage the interior. Where is this section? I'm afraid I don't remember what chapter it's in. But there's an entire bit about how sergeants would oftentimes, upon their being promoted to the role of sergeant, receive a silver-hilted infantry hanger. Gorgeous, beautiful blade, silver. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But Cuthbertson advises, like, hey, those sergeants who are, a little smarter will not actually carry that sword. They will buy themselves a cheaper sword out of their own personal money, and they'll use that. Because if you get captured and you lose that sword, if you have to give it up, well, then guess what? It's on you to replace it with a new one. Out of your personal pocket money.
I also feel, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to add this. I also feel that maybe that would stand you out also on the field. Because silver has a decent shine to it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine so. Yeah, and the thing is that all of these swords, among the officer classes, swords were private purchase. They're being purchased by individual officers when they, join the army. Oh. When you're joining up, you're not just buying your commission. You're not just buying your ensigncy. You're also buying your uniform. You're also buying your equipment. And you are, paying oftentimes for a couple of the things for the men as well as you go along. A lot of it is coming out of your pocket. The military is an investment, so to say. It's a big investment. It's a big economic thing. Now, as you get to higher and higher up officers, you start to see more and more, like less, sabers and whatnot that are of simpler design. You start to see, fancier blades, start to see like small swords and whatnot, more expensive things, because those guys are more able to afford those kinds of things. And obviously, in some situations, yes, there are weapons being given, like by the army or by the king or by Duke such and such or Baron so and so and whatnot. Obviously, and it's not everything is private purchase, but the standard is private purchase. So to say.
Did not know that.
Yeah, it's
that shines a big light on it, because the idea I had was there was a standard issue sword, like in the Civil War. You had your NCO swords, you had your light cav sabers, you had your heavy ones, and you even had the musicians even had their own swords that was issued to them as part of regulations. Now, true, as with rank, broaden your horizons to what you can do to make your persona, so to speak, more personalized. Now, I didn't know that was the case with the Royal Army, so to say.
Not a royal army. Not been royal since the English Civil War. But that's pedantic. Yeah, no, actually, a lot of stuff was private purchase in the 18th century. In fact, when a man enlists in the military in the 18th century, in most militaries, he receives his pay and whatnot, but he also receives a number of stoppages. He's receiving stoppages for paying for his coat. He is receiving stoppages for paying for his shirts and his small clothes, for the cleaning, for the laundry of his clothing. He is paying for that. Usually, women that are following the regiment, they are in the actual employment of the regiment. These aren't just like army followers who are taking up odd jobs. These were women who followed the army and were paid by the army on the army's book. I should say on the regimental. It's all on the regimental level. On the regiment's books, because the regiment has like its own treasury of sorts, called the regiment. They're paid by the regiment to launder the men's clothing, and the men have to pay into that fund to have their clothes laundered. Even for medical care, in fact. If a soldier, is receiving a certain amount of pay or whatever, and he has to go into the regimental hospital, he will receive a stoppage that goes towards the funds, towards the account of the regimental hospital to pay for their care. And in fact, Cuthbertson specifically mentioned, like, hey, when these guys are in the hospital, like normally soldiers have a full right to a full accounting of how their money is being spent. Like, hey, we gave you stoppages of X or Y number of shillings for this pay period. It was for these purposes, for these things for you. But if they're in the hospital, don't tell them what it's being used for, because sometimes a man might have to pay more into the hospital than he's actually getting out in medical care. Because, if some guy is just in because he has a venereal disease, okay, well, that's a little bit of medicine, you're good to go. Whereas if a guy's in the hospital because, he lost his leg, well, his bills are going to be a little bit higher. And so it's like a weirdly socialistic system, actually, when you go into a regimental hospital back in the day, except everyone has to pay an awful lot more. But yeah, it's all private purchase. It's all coming out of someone's pocket.
That shines a lot of light. I'm glad I'm actually learning.
It's crazy to think about because it's such an alien idea to us. But the idea being that when you join as a soldier, well, that's a career, that's a job, and you have to maintain yourself as a soldier. We are providing you the funding to do so, and you better use those funds appropriately. Obviously, there's a little bit of money left over, at the end of the day, and some things would be given to the soldiers without charge. Those are usually the things that have the little GRs on it, like the Georgius Rex, a little broad arrow on it. It means, this belongs to the king. This was given to you by the king, so you best take care of it. Men are not required to pay for their musketry. They're not required to pay for haversacks and things like that oftentimes. Blankets would often be provided on the establishment or whatever to be phrased as. They are provided by the king, so be grateful.
Now, I had a question. It just left me. Oh, have you ever heard? I know your knowledge of the American Civil War is limited, just as my knowledge of the Rev War, and where your knowledge is greater than mine, vice versa. There is actually a man known as Leopard Sam. He was I believe he was a Confederate general, and he was known for having leopard skin pants and 2 leopard skin holsters. I got the picture up here. I'm going to see if I can send it to you on Discord, because the man is quite the sight to see.
He sounds Texan.
And there's even reports of he might have been a colonel for the Confederacy. I'm sure he was a general. In your terms, he had a cocked hat. Which
guy sounds familiar. He sounds familiar.
Yes, and for some reason, a lot of reenactors think just because there's documented proof, that means it's okay. Like, because of Leopard Sam, there have been cases of people fighting in leopard skin pants.
Goodness. And see, that is oftentimes another problem with reenactment, is people will find one example, like, oh, see, it was done, so I can do it too. Whereas I think the goal of reenactment really should be to portray the norm, not the exception. And someone fighting in leopard skin trousers, that would be the exception. I'm going to take, again, I don't know as much about the Civil War. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that wasn't exactly the most common thing.
Oh, no, we did all the time. Yeah. Especially during, like, fancy, but no. No, it was, like I said, he's the only one ever documented to wear leopard anything.
Mhm.
And like kilts. I've seen a lot of people wearing kilts. I'm glad you want to express your heritage. Me, myself, I'm Irish of heritage and Scottish and German. That is why on my kepi I have my Irish Harp of Erin. But that also does not mean that outside my tent I'm going to be flying an Irish flag. I got my little bit of, this is me, that's it. So if for people who wear kilts, I'm glad you're expressing on the battlefield mainly. I'm glad you're expressing your heritage, but kilts would have been something more reserved for ceremonies or parades. Because, if you're, let's say, walking through thick bush and you have a kilt on.
Yeah,
Bad idea.
Practical.
Yeah, not only is it unpractical, it's unsafe. Because you can easily get snagged up on a thorn bush, trip, get your legs all cut up, and so then you go from reenacting to having a fun time after the battle, cooling down, drinking water, talking with the public, to laying in your tent, treating your wounds. That's just one of the big farbs, which I do hope we do a small segment on farbs, because there are so many that are just no. But even with me and my Lamat, that would...
I have so many cursed images saved on my computer, like memes and whatnot.
Of course, Brandon F. has it.
Oh my god. Would that I could make a video talking about some of these reenactors.
Yes, the man with the cocked hat, Colonel Blackbeard.
But I can't. I have to be nice. I can't, and so...
Do it anyway.
Now, let's just say there are some organizations out there that don't try. I'm glad that in the Brigade of the American Revolution there are good standards. Even the less authentic groups are still, they still hold themselves like they're good. They're good, solid groups across the board. But unfortunately, in some organizations, particularly ones very far out west,
I have a channel on my Discord server for just memes. Feel free to put those there, because I would love to laugh.
I'll send you. I'll send you one particular image after all of this.
Please do.
I'll just say, all right. So I'll say this because I'm being very, very vague, and I doubt this would ever get back to the person. And if it does, then I apologize. But my guy, you should do better. There's a picture I saw. One guy who was just wearing Crocs.
Oh
my god! Are you kidding me?
Wearing a Scottish Highlander.
Oh,
he just had Crocs. Didn't even have any gaiters over top of them. It was a pair of black Crocs. Oh no!
I pray he was brand new to the hobby.
Yeah.
And that was all
you can
leather.
tell it was probably his first event. But come on, here's the thing. A lot of guys will go around with modern shoes, modern day dress shoes, and in 18th century when you wear the gaiters over top of them, not a big deal, because you can tell the soles are modern, but you can't really see all that much, and it's a small detail. That's okay. I'm understanding of that, because sometimes it's really expensive to get the 18th century shoes. When you're first getting involved, it's a lot of money up front. Whatever. That's okay. But Crocs,
taking it too far.
Yeah, that's a bit much,
I did that too.
Go ahead. Did his mic cut out? Hello?
What's that?
Am I being heard here? I think Bryce, I think your mic is cut out. I am jealous. I cannot hear what's going on, and I do not know why.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's
No. I'm surprised an actual reenactor, didn't kick his butt out of there and teach the public actual things. And I wanted to shoot myself because he sounded like he didn't know anything about the Gettysburg campaign.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm like, kill me. Just kill me.
Brandon, Shemley has put a flag in the channel Flags of Your Nation just for you, Brandon.
Nice.
He has been excited for this day.
Aw. Not gonna lie, I'm getting some pretty strong British Union fascist vibes from that, but I still like the flag.
Oh, you should see all the flags. They're one of the biggest farbs I saw was this guy. Oh Lord, he had.
Oh, I can't wait for this.
He. It wasn't when I first started the hobby. You know, I went to when I first got my first revolver. I went to Cabela's and bought the cheapest holster they had, just so that it would stop falling out from my belt. But you could tell this man, he had top of the line gear. He had what looked like basically a Wish.com holster. It was black leather. It looked like it was from the old West, like a rootin' tootin' shooting cowboys holster. Had the black finish on it, all the silver decorating it, and I'm just looking at him, and he's like demonstrating like this was used in this time, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. That at least 20 years, man. Give it at least 20 years, and that will be relevant. And I had to turn around and just walk away because this guy was just, this was completely used. And it even looked like not even just the holster, it looked like the whole Wild West belt, like the big shiny silver belt buckle and the big old thick leather hip placement. This guy was just making a fool of himself. And I look around, all the other camps are just, they're hiding their faces like, oh no. And you can find.
Oh Jesus, that's just for 1 point.
You could tell who he was with too because his camp was deserted. Like he had a full camp and people were just walking off going to Settler Row. I swear someone was going to go buy him a holster.
I mean, unless he's new to the hobby, it's understandable because people who just join don't have the cash to buy the proper items. But at least.
Oh no, he had top of the line gear. Like he had a JT Martin sack coat. He had beautiful sky blue trousers. He looked like more of a showman than a reenactor. It was so bad.
And that's why, like, whenever you portray a certain period, one of my two most favorite things about reenacting is one, depending on what, like, especially on the event, like you feel like you're actually like in that battle.
Yeah.
And another thing is just the uniforms. Is good. A good thing, for example, the Confederate uniforms during the Civil War, because you have just a bright of colors and coats and hats and such. So really, it's interesting that the uniforms of both sides, because like while you have the average Union blue, you have all kinds of colors for the CSA: butternut, gray, black, blue, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Also, like don't mean to cut you off. Are you finished? I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm finished for now.
I didn't know this until recently, that in the beginning of the American Civil War, the infantry didn't even use a kepi of this color. Theirs would have been the same color as their trousers. And Cav actually used a completely yellow hat. Completely yellow kepi, which I didn't know in the beginning.
Yeah, there was a Mississippi unit at the start of the war, the 11th Mississippi. They actually had, at the start of the war, a full-out red uniform. The kepi, the pants, everything was red. But, of course, after the First Battle of Bull Run, they got rid of that, and the only red was on their cuffs.
So, another thing I want to ask you, Brandon, is how many, your regimentals, the color on your coat, correct?
Yeah.
How many different colors were there?
Like how many different, like on a single coat or combinations, do you mean?
Both.
I'm sorry, you cut out again. Say that?
Both question stands for both. Like, were there like different color cuffs than to match the lapels, or?
Yeah, well, so I'll speak broadly because there's pretty much always some sort of like little regimental exception. For the most part, you really only have like two main colors. You have obviously the red of the coat itself, unless you happen to be artillery, then it's blue. And then you have the color of the cuffs, the collar, and going down the face of the regimentals. Those are all considered the facings color. Like whatever your facings color, it's all the same color. Popinjay green, or a regiment like any of the foot, a royal blue. For the 33rd, I believe for the 33rd it was red actually, so it was red coat, red facings. For what else is that? I mean, there were buff color facings, there were black facings for some regiments, which is a really great look, I think.
Definitely.
There were yellow. The 10th Regiment of Foot had yellow facings, things like that. Basically, every color under the sun except for purple, because just wasn't that very expensive. Blue is the mark of a royal regiment, so it has to be bestowed to you as like an honor of some sort. So Foot Guards, the 23rd, which is the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, would have it. Things like that. They have the blue facings. Now, with as well, an extra bit of details, oftentimes around every individual button on those regimental coats, you would usually have a lacing pattern. So on the 54th, our lacing pattern is very simple. We have simply, like those like white triangles around each button. You familiar?
I believe you're cutting out there.
Oh, sorry. Hold on, my internet may be a little spotty. Are you familiar at all with the white rectangles around the button?
I've seen a couple. I've also seen, I think someone had oval around their buttons.
Yeah. So that's the lace on the coat, and that lacing can come in many different patterns. Sometimes it's like triangular, sometimes rectangular, and that would have a different like pattern of colors inside of it as well. For the 54th, it's just in the white white rectangle. It's just a single, very thin rectangle of green lace. But in others, like the 23rd, they had like yellow, black, red, something like that, like dashes. The lacing pattern would be different for every individual regiment as well.
The American Civil War had their own version of that. You could tell what branch someone was or what their job was, judging by the color on which they wore, as far as NCOs and officers go. Like mine, you can see it matches. It's basically a black background matches my coat. That would show that I am of general staff. And I got my Cav stripes here. Cav would always be associated with yellow. Infantry would always be sky blue. And artillery would be red. And the medical corps would be green.
Okay. So again, what we have is a great deal of standardization. We have a very large military apparatus with a massive standard applied across the board for the entire thing because of mass production. You need to get as much of this stuff out as possible. Whereas even in the British, among like the Royal Artillery, artillery in the British Army wore blue coats. That's not so much because they were like artillery. Oh, artillery wears blue. Not necessarily. It's more a matter of the regiment of the Royal Artillery, like for their organization, was given the honor of wearing a blue coat. The only regiment, in fact, the only men in the army who could wear the blue coats, at least at that time, in particular, the later period of the 18th century, by the king, because he basically liked them so much. He's like, hey, you guys, you're not just going to have facings of blue. Your whole coat can be blue because I like you. Blue's my color. I'm going to give that to you. But even then, it wasn't so much like, oh, all of the artillery wears blue. It was more of an individual distinction to be granted. Cavalry, they're not wearing different colors at all. It's just the style of their coat and whatnot. Although even within a regiment, enlisted men, private soldiers and corporals both would be wearing coats of madder red, which is a very, very dark, like sort of brick red color. Very cheap, very easy to manufacture.
Sort of that red, kind of?
Yeah, exactly. Why do you have a brick next to you?
No, that is not a brick. It is actually a pen.
Oh, okay.
No, I
said brick red, and you took out a rectangle. I just assumed
right over here. I actually have
a bit like
block.
that. If you look at any of my own photographs, it's the color that I wear. Whereas sergeants and basically sergeants, sergeant majors, and any commissioned officer would have a coat of scarlet, which is a much brighter more expensive and more garish shade of red, as a distinction again for the rank.
I didn't know it went into that level of depth, and that is.
Oh yeah,
that is very interesting.
It's a very complex system, and a lot of it has to do with social relationships just as much as military practicality.
So in a similar line of buying your commission, it was who you knew, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean, the idea being that the NCOs, the sergeants and the corporals, must be distinctive and separate from the enlisted men because they are, well, they're over them. They are commanding them. They're giving orders. Basically, all of the actual discipline in the British Army, even kind of to this day, relied on the NCO. Relied on the corporals and the sergeants to exact discipline and keep the guys on track. The officers are even a further level removed. They are gentlemen. They are not only your superiors in like command, they are your social superiors. They are of a different class. They are better than you. They are gentlemen, whereas you are a commoner. That social distinction it cannot be expressed how important it is. And the thing is that not all of the British officers were aristocrats. Actually, like less than a tenth of them were actually from the nobility. A lot of these guys were from like merchant families and the middle class who bought their way into it. The military is a tool of social mobility, incredible social mobility. However, whether or not you come from an aristocratic family, when you enter the officer class, you become a gentleman. And you must take on the airs, you must take on the attitudes, you must take on the nature of that social class. It's how you behave, it's how you act, how you treat other people. An officer rarely, if ever, speaks to the men. You speak to the NCO, who then passes the order off to the men. If a general comes down and talks to a regular guy, that's a really big deal. If a regular officer speaks about a regular guy, that's a big deal. And the thing I think that a lot of people in 21st century like mindsets don't understand is that this was not only favored back in the day, like the men would look favorably on their officers as a result of all this. They didn't think, oh, those hoity-toity, guys sitting in their high ivory castles, not getting down and dirty with all the rest of them. No. You want to be led by a gentleman during this time period. You want to be led by your social superiors. The men oftentimes would look to their NCOs and hate them, as you expect. That's the guy who's telling me to clean all my stuff. That's the guy who's telling me to get marching. That's the guy who's giving me all these duties. He's the one who's responsible for my being disciplined as a soldier. But they look to the officers and they would be inspired by them as like, I want to be more like that guy. Look at how he holds himself. He seems so like unafraid of the battle happening around him. He's standing straight and tall. He's speaking in a calm and refined voice. Officers aren't shouting and screaming these commands. They're saying, Sergeant, have the company fire a volley. And then the sergeant's going to be turning around and saying, company make ready. And all that stuff. The gentleman is like a whole other animal at this point. And the men look to them for inspiration. It's a massively important aspect of the dynamic of that time period is social class. Not to sound like a Marxist, but class is the most important thing in 18th century society, among other things like religion and such.
I always figured that the like you said, get down from your ivory tower. I wouldn't have never thought that they would have inspired the troops in that on that level.
Yeah. In fact, let me see here. No, unfortunately, I don't have it. There's an excellent account from the Napoleonic Wars, the Recollections of Rifleman Harris, which is memoirs written by a private soldier in the Rifles. He becomes a sergeant later on, about his time, in the wars. And actually, he writes about how, he blatantly says at one point that men prefer to be led by gentlemen than by non-gentlemen, and he writes about how in one very disastrous retreat, the British retreat to Corunna, was in the Spanish campaigns during the Napoleonic Wars. Disastrous, horrible thing. Many men died. Forced retreat, that kind of stuff. And how the general who was keeping them going was like a super harsh disciplinarian. Like they were whipping and lashing people all along the way on this retreat back to the city to safety. And Reverend Harris later says, he's like, hey, it may have seemed harsh, but that's what kept the army going. Like his leading by example and his not accepting any exception to that, but being strict and harsh along the whole way of like, I don't care if we're retreating, you will uphold a certain standard. And if you don't meet that standard, you will be punished for it. Like that harsh discipline, that is what allowed us to escape with our lives that day. Like they welcomed that in a weird way. Not to say that the British Army was always this like, whippings and lashings and cruel, harsh discipline, because that's another misnomer. This idea that officers were very, very cruel. In fact, more often than not, they were quite kind. But,
oh, thank you.
Footlover.
My mother is here.
So it went both ways, though.
Talking to one of my YouTube idols.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mama Red!
Brandon, this is my mother.
Hello.
Hi.
He's from Ohio. He's one of the successful Ohio people.
There's no such thing.
I beg to differ. I'm talking to him.
I tried.
That's my light, dude.
Yeah, I told you I was going to use it.
What?
You said okay.
I thought you were going to use it that one time.
No, they need to see my beautiful face.
Oh, jeez.
Fred, did you take a light? Did you take a light?
Yes.
No comment.
Yes, he did. And it was his mama's. Where's the head?
The what? The camera?
No, the head.
The
Right
head. You mean right there?
Yeah.
The clown mask?
Oh, there it is.
Yes,
I see it now.
spikes right there.
Okay.
Yes, Brandon, if you're at all curious about the clown mask, go ahead and ask.
That's
I was wondering about that earlier.
In October, I work for a haunted trail, and my character is
Okay.
Spike the Cannibalistic Clown.
I remember that.
They basically put me in a cage and give me a steel bat, and yeah,
Come and help your live.
Scream at people.
yes. There are many times when I come home and I'm sounding just like this.
Oh, I'm sure.
I knew you were home. I could smell your cigar as soon as we rocked in the house. Crying out loud.
That was my mother.
I was going to have a guest appearance.
Yes, believe it or not, she did I let her do a birthday live stream on my channel, and she got more views than I did.
That was the best live stream. That was the best one.
I was so mad. I'm like, why are you getting more views?
It's always with the particulars. Something different from the norm.
Yes. Oh, speaking of cigars, let's say for a corporal of the Revolutionary War for the British Army,
Mhm.
would a cigar be more practical, or perhaps a clay pipe, or would they have had nothing at all?
The clay pipes would have been more common. Cigars existed, as I understand it, which I was actually surprised to learn about when I did. But cigars apparently existed, during that time period. But pipes were much more common.
I have a question for you, Brandon.
Yes.
In Red War reenactments, do y'all, are there times where y'all can capture enemy flags or no? Like regiment?
It's happened before. It can happen in events. More often than not, there are no colors on the battlefield, just because there's not a lot of battalion level fighting happening, not only in reenactment but in Rev War in general. But if indeed there are a set of colors on the field, then yeah, you can capture it, to be sure.
Because I remember one time I heard this story, and this was in Texas. I don't know anywhere else in states that do a Civil War reenactment, but this guy took this regimental Confederate flag from the other side, and they got angry, and they proceeded to beat him because he took.
Yeah, normally it's always between like groups that know each other. Like if you don't know the person, then you're not going to take their flag. I think the Red War community is a lot smaller, and ergo it's a lot closer knit in a lot of ways. Like a lot of people, they know each other, and they know like the boundaries, they know the lines and whatnot. Like actually there's a great example. at the Battle of Stony Point, for example, the British, we all got captured at one point. We all got herded into the middle of the fort or whatever, and forced on our knees and everything, and like at gunpoint. We're prisoners of the Americans at this point. And some of the guys were like some of the British soldiers, like they try and break out and escape. They try and like wrestle their way out, and there was like an actual like melee, quote unquote. But it was all between these two groups that knew each other very well. I didn't really know them, so like I went in to get involved, but I didn't really get in there. I just kind of like, come on, guy, like trying to like pull people up and whatnot, but like in a way that wasn't like really intense, as it were, because I didn't know those guys, so I didn't want to get in on it like too much and do something that I wasn't supposed to do, as it were. In another instance, though, this one guy, Mark, great guy of the 5th Connecticut, good friend of my group, we know him well. He pushed me down rather physically, and he's like, he says like stay in the pen or whatever, because like they had herded us all into like this one central location. So he says like stay in your paddock or whatever, and I like throw my arms out. I'm like, this is ridiculous. We're not animals. And he throws his like fist under like in my face, and he's like you shut your mouth. Or you'll be slaughtered like an animal, or something like that. He gives like some like really cool one-liner, which is like, really intense. And if I didn't know that guy, it'd be kind of like, oh, okay. But we it was a lot more personal, and so you're able to have a little bit more leeway with that kind of stuff. In a more lighthearted event, like we once captured Mark, the same guy, and we made fun of him for having a big nose for like 20 minutes as we were parading him back. But it's because we're friends. And the exact same thing, if the 54th had a set of colors out there, I would be daring the 5th Connecticut to come over here and try and take our colors because they're good guys and we have fun with them. So it's all in, it's all in good sporting and whatnot, good sporting nature. That sort of thing can happen. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to say, it is always good when units who know each other go up against each other, because then you can make it look all more the real.
Yeah, and you know what the other guys are good at, and you can play to that, and you can have fun with it.
Like with the 1st Tennessee, one unit that I was that I fought against for the last year, with the 8th year I fought against them. Sadly, we were the unit that dispersed them, and we started marching some prisoners back, and I'm walking next to a guy, and I go, "Hey, start shuffling your feet. I'm gonna push you with my rifle." And he goes, and he says, and he doesn't hesitate. He goes, "How are you going to do it?" And I go, "What do you think, butt or barrel?" He goes, "Butt, shoulder, left." And I'm like, done. So he starts shuffling his feet. I take my rifle and I just, get moving. And he sits there. He throws his left shoulder forward and he turns around and gives me this ugly look. And I lever my, act like, how they threaten with the rifle, like threaten to level it or something. And I did that, and he just like shrugged it off and just kept on walking. And it's great to do those unexpected, because we were parading them through spectators. And so when he did that, the spectators were like, "Whoa, is there actually some bad blood in between them?" But just because we knew how it was going to play out, and we could just talk, single words, so it looked like just like, like filthy rev or something. It looked really good. Same thing I did on a train where it was during a train robbery. A buddy of mine, I pulled the short straw to be the drunk soldier. And so and we did this in a passenger car. People who paid to sit there. We're sitting there, and I'm sitting in a car, just sitting there like this in a seat, just, all glazed look and everything, head just all like slouched over. And I wave him down. I go, "Let's give him a show. I'm going to choke you out, put you in the seat. We're going to wrestle for a bit, choke you out, take the pistol, tuck it in my belt, and walk out of here." He goes, "I love it." And so I grab him. We start. Immediately, people are like, and just scared to death. Like I have like my forearm, pressed up against his chest real close, looking like it's on a start. And I just take the pistol, tuck it in my belt, and tip my hat. Not one person wasn't staring at me. Even the people in the front, like, were on their knees on their seat, looking like Kilroy from World War II. Like, what's happening?
Yep.
And he lay there the rest of the train ride, and he said people were poking him, like, "Sir, are you okay?
Yep.
You okay?"
Was that real? Did I just witness a homicide?
Yeah, like, I thought this was a reenactment. No wonder the hobby's dying down.
Sounds like something you would do, Red.
Yeah. I like to oh, it looks like we might have someone else joining the podcast here. Let's see.
Mr. Nolfi. All right.
Yes, I believe he is let's see. Nolfi, what's your name on Discord? Oh, there it is. It is Nolfi. Let's get a little bit of a Nolfi in here. Nolfi, you are now free to join.
The more the merrier. Come on.
Yes, within respect range. Like Shemley, I could tell by now would be doing weird stuff.
Probably not the best.
Yeah, he would probably be moaning. As you
Yeah.
can tell, Brandon, my community is colorful.
Oh, don't you worry. I've seen it all.
Oh, who is the one?
You know, they wrote a fan fiction about me. You know that my own people.
I request you tell it.
I don't have it saved.
Who is the one in your live streams who is your husband that he says?
That could be a number
Shapiro.
of people.
Shapiro.
I'm not married.
Shapiro.
Say again.
Robbie Shapiro, I think it is, isn't it?
Oh, Rona Shapiro.
Rona, yes.
Rona, yes. Oh, Rona. Rona's a good guy. He's a strange fella.
He's a
At
character.
times, but he's a good kid.
You notice all the strange ones usually have the best intentions at heart.
Yeah, no, it's not, none of it's cruel intentions. So
No.
yes, Rona.
I do have to admit, though, I do love catching your live streams, especially when you play Assassin's Creed 3 or Black Flag.
God.
Oh, you know what? Here's the sad part. Assassin's Creed, okay, they're not really historians. You don't expect them to get everything absolutely correct. But I was playing the History Channel's Civil War game.
God damn it.
God, I remember when that came out. I was so excited, like, oh boy, like linear combat. I like that stuff. It was
It was awful. And the fact that, like you said in talk about Assassin's Creed 3, when they swung the bayonet, I understand that what they were doing in the game was a parry from first-person view, but you weren't parrying anything. You were just trying to take this man's coat away from him because you liked it. Nice coat. Let me have it. And then you fired the muskets with no musket cap on there, and you literally packed them, and then you just pulled the hammer back and fired. And I'm sitting here like, what am I using to fire this thing?
Yeah.
And then you get on the cannon being loaded like every 10 seconds or something. I want to meet that cannon crew.
Yeah. They're very skilled at what they do.
Oh yeah, they are often mistaken
that's
for
like
having
one of
a
my
Gatling
favorite
gun.
games. That's like one of my favorite games,
Oh.
Assassin's Creed 3.
Oh yeah, I love it just because of the fact that I actually get to use a tomahawk. But I also
Yeah, it's great.
lied in the trailer about throwing it.
Or the canoe. I was upset about that.
Yes.
I was upset by the entire game.
Of course.
I loved watching that series because you would find like a button that wasn't accurate and you would go for 15 minutes on the history of this button alone and its
I
cousins.
think that I say in like the second episode, like I'm don't worry guys, I'm gonna try and be a bit faster with all this stuff now. And then it's bad.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember because I love
Like,
listening to it at work
after we've
because
covered all the uniforms being wrong, well, what else could there be?
and I was waiting for you to get on the bayonets on how they were fixed. Because I think you started hinting on that on what, episode 3?
Something like that.
And like I'm watching the both two and I'm like, how is he forgetting the bayonets? How is he? And then because I at work, I don't often have time to watch videos, so I love playing something. I gotta be honest. Because of your colorful commentary, I love listening to it because I could see you doing it. And just, I remember just the intro. So I know what you're thinking. Because it came up as under a playlist. And I'm like, what kind of Brandon video am I watching to where it starts?
Yeah.
So this is what you're thinking. And then it's like, like you said, the second one. So I'm not going to stick as long on the details. 3 seconds later, look at this guy. Look at him.
And then 20 minutes later, after you're done with the description,
Look, then 20 minutes later, look at the guy standing next to him. But Brandon, in all honesty, dude, I love you. You're amazing.
oh, Oh, well, thank you.
I aspire to be that level of awesome one day.
Well, I mean, again, you only see a very, carefully curated selection, as it were, of everything on the internet. Well,
Yes.
in any case. Actually, I think I'm hoping by the end of the day today to get another video out. I made a video, like a quick one, about putties in World War One. It's like how you put them on, like what they do, like why they were a thing. And so before you use a word like awesome to describe it, I need to give you the context of what I did for this video. So I put on my World War One kit, like I put on like my tunic and my trousers and my putties, and I went out into the woods. Like there's a little like a nature trail. It's not too far from my house, like just outside of town. And I went into the woods. I found a creek. I found like an area that was all like muddy and watery and everything. And I just kind of like stamped around in it for a little while to talk about like, so you see how the mud is getting all over the putties, but the trousers are protected. And a couple of people walked on by. I'm like, it's
That's part of the
got a lot of weird books.
That is one of the levels of awesome and commitment. Because there was one event. It was the historical Ohio Village. Are you familiar with this?
Wait, I'm sorry. Say again.
The historical Ohio Village.
Zor?
Yes, Zor, Ohio.
Yeah,
yes.
I've been there a few times.
You know
actually.
the giant levee right next to the town?
Yeah.
We were given the grace to march up and down that about 8 times. Right after it rained.
Oh God.
I don't know about what kind of I'm guessing in Revolutionary War you guys had hobnails on the bottom of your footwear.
Some people do. I do not. I actually don't know how authentic they may or may not be. Is the thing.
Well, on my boots, I have nothing but heel plates, and I am trying to go down that steep levee while it is still moist with rain. I had a perfect Benny Hill fall.
Oh God!
Like I slipped. My feet went up. By the end of it, my feet were up like this. I'm on my butt, and all I needed was just like the whoop from a Benny Hill movie, and it would have been perfect.
Goodness.
And then the heat that day, they're like, so you guys are going to keep on marching up and down this, and we all just sat down like, what are you guys doing? It's like, it's too hot. It's too humid to be doing that. He's like, but it's for the history. And I'm like, now you're just being rude.
Actually, on a somewhat related subject, how often do you guys do events like up in Zor and like around Fort Lawrence, that area?
Zor, I think, has one yearly event. They might do more.
Okay.
We also did one in Sharon Woods, which is a completely historical village. They even had a what's the word I'm thinking of? Where you take something and relocate it. That's it. Relocated
How about in the Ohio History Connection place in Columbus?
I
go there.
Don't maybe.
No, I know they've done events there because another friend of mine does Civil War stuff. So I've not been to an event there, but I have like been to the site. Yeah, so I go back to Ohio usually like once or twice every year just to see family and whatnot. So I'll have to try and get to one of these Civil War events at some point.
So, being a Shemley here has requested I tell you something, and I do not take light in saying this. Brandon, I didn't know your channel existed, but thanks to one of your vids, I know why reenactors don't actually put things in the guns when firing. Which,
well, good.
That is.
Don't actually shoot each other.
Yes, because if we did, the hobby would be dead.
Like, look, the events would look great, but there wouldn't be a lot of them.
So
yeah.
General Kaltz here would like me to extend an invitation to you to Grant Days next year.
What is that?
It is the celebration of General Grant at his boyhood home in Georgetown, Ohio.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you where that was because it sounded interesting.
Georgetown is close to Mount Orab. Like, if you don't mind me asking, when you lived in Ohio, whereabouts were you?
The Columbus area.
Columbus. Okay. Let me think here. Geology and me are like cats and dogs.
Oh no. So no matter where, I mean, it's I don't mind traveling. I used to travel like 3 hours minimum for every event that I went to.
Yeah.
3 hours.
before it, the whole coronavirus happened, we got Georgetown
Yeah.
to be a very nice event. We had Confederates coming out because it was before, my general here, he took a hold of it. It was dying, and he's been begging for them to give it to him. So this year was going to be his chance, but they understand because of the whole corona pandemic.
Yeah,
Why it
yeah,
couldn't
you
go
gotta
on.
cancel.
And
But it says last year was in April 2019.
yes,
Right, so presumably it'll be the same weekend next year.
yes, it should be.
All right,
It is.
I will put that on my list.
It is
That
40
might be
miles
so.
east of Cincinnati, 20 miles north of the river, 25 miles north
Alright.
of the river.
Nice. If nothing else, I'd like to get to that site at some point. Sounds interesting.
Oh yeah, it's really neat because I think for a few years ago, they actually had the tannery open to the public. I think they also
Ooh.
have his home open to the public.
Huh. Nice.
Yes, it is, and plus it is a lovely small town, and you cannot go wrong with
Alright.
those.
Sounds good. Yeah. Keep that on my list.
Please do. Let's see. Shemley says, Brandon, I'm sorry if I offended you by saying I didn't know your channel was what?
No, that's not. No, the grand majority of people know nothing about my channel. It is a very niche bit of content that I produce.
Oh, he says, the journal says around the 27th of April, let us know and we'll give you, I'm guessing he meant invitation. We'll give you a personal invitation.
All right, well, here, let me write down. I'll write it down on my, like, at the end of the calendar, so that way I can know to mark it down for next year. Because it does sound fun, and whether or not the actual event I'm able to do, I want to keep the site in my mind.
Oh, a general. Oh, okay. He said he will give you a personal tour.
Well.
Yes.
I would not say no to that.
If there is any man who knows anything there is to know about Grant, it is General Kautz. Because I know I'm going to butcher this, and General, I'm sorry, they went to General Kautz and General Grant went to school together. Yes.
See. Turns out my calendar has a future planning section, so that's perfect. Grant days.
Oh, you got a fancy calendar.
That's the one thing that does suck about this whole thing with the coronavirus is like every event has been canceled this year,
Yeah.
and it just sucks.
Everything.
Yes.
I was actually supposed to go next weekend. The Monmouth Battlefield, New Jersey. They were paying organizations $4,000 just to show up, and it got canceled. There was a 4-stage event they were planning that was going to last like 2-3 weeks, and I was like, oh, I'm definitely going. And they canceled it altogether because of the virus now. It sucks.
I was planning on going over to the UK and Europe for Waterloo 2020. That got canceled, unfortunately.
Sucks.
Now,
Yeah, but all for the best in the end, given the situation. So
now the next little thing I want to talk about, and Matt, you're going to hate this. Have you ever come across maybe any paranormal activity at events?
No, nothing like that. I don't much get into that kind of stuff. People told me about things, but I don't.
I don't mean
myself
like actually going out to go ghost hunting or anything.
Right,
I
you know
mean-
my position. You know my position. You know I've seen stuff. Honestly, it terrifies the crap out of me.
I know, that's why I'm sorry, but people love it.
Generally speaking, I look at a lot of things like the ghost tours at like Gettysburg and whatnot. It just kind of makes me angry. I'm gonna be honest, but that's again because I don't believe in any of it. So I look at it as more profiteering. But
Yeah.
that's beside the point.
I have to admit there have been a few occasions where I've been on historical battlefields like the Richmond battlefield, and this story I told in the stream last night, but I will tell you it again because it is a really good story. I was and that's and off goes the headset. I was laying down in my tent after the battle, ready to go to sleep. And the rest of my unit was staying awake, talking around the fire, drinking a bit, just having a good time. And all of a sudden, I'm laying down and I hear cannon fire and musket fire. And naturally I'm thinking, oh, we're doing a night battle. Oh, I better get ready real quick. So I get up, I'm rustling to get my belt on, get my carbine on, get everything all together. And I bust out of my tent battle ready. And they are all 4 people have beers. 1 man had moonshine because that's all he drinks.
As you do, yeah.
And they all turn around what are you doing? I'm like, you
What's
guys
going on there?
didn't hear that? And they go, hear what? The sloshing of beer? I was like, no, the gunfire and artillery. And they're like, no. And then just as I was like about to go back in my tent, I look out on this hill and I see this silhouetted man with a musket and a bayonet attached. And he just vanished. And I went back to sleep like, okay. I'll come to terms with what I saw in the morning.
I just don't mess with ghosts. That's just me. Honestly, the Gettysburg ghost stuff, some of it, I'm like, some of it may or may not be real. I don't question it. However, my first sergeant was the real reason why I was like, ghosts are real, is because he's woken up in the middle of the night and apparently ghosts have tried to strangle him. And I'm just like, oh, God damn it, forget it. I personally never had like paranormal experiences, but I can guarantee you I would volunteer for the executioner's end of the firing squad.
Yeah, I do have a ghost in my room, I do believe, because at times my door will randomly open and close.
I wish I could share a story, but my explanation would just be air pressure.
Of course.
So it's not as exciting, I'm afraid.
Oh, come on, man.
That's my favorite thing is you ever go to Gettysburg, the National Park Service is always like, there's no ghosts. It's always funny, I think.
I think we all have very fond memories. Let's take about 5 minutes or so to tell one of our favorite reenacting stories. Brandon, being the special guest, would you honor us by gracing us with an amazing tale?
You think there's something I just have off the top of my head? Let me. All right, top feud experience. I already talked about the one at Stony Point, where we got overrun by the enemy. So that was good fun. When we found the dragon head, which was good fun, and we dragged it out from the dump. It's not really a reenactment story though; it's just a silly story. The night raid at Newville. That's a good story. So are you familiar at all with the Newville reenactment site in Pennsylvania? It's a World War I battlefield environment where basically it's just like a giant plot of property, like an old farm or whatever, that literally they just built out of it. It's just like right out of 1916. It is a series of 2 trenches. There are reserve trenches and communication trenches. There are frontline trenches. There are mortar pits that are actually firing, mortar rounds, not explosive mortar rounds, but little canisters that do go pop, and gas canisters and whatnot. They're firing, colored gas for actual gas, and then white gas for just smoke. There are machine gun nests, and there are bunkers. There's actual barbed wire on this site, all that stuff. And it is it's a full-on tactical event. Nothing is really planned. There's no winner or loser by the end of the day. It's a matter of who does what as it goes on. You guys carrying out a trench raid? Awesome. Do it. Go get some prisoners. Drag those German prisoners back over to your line, and interrogate them or whatever. You can do that. And it's oh no, we captured those German prisoners, which means they don't get to take part in the next big battle, the next big push. All right, too bad. They shouldn't have gotten captured then. They should have been more alert against that night raid.
That is cool.
Oh, it is. It is the coolest thing. And sometimes you even get guys who do stuff in first person, which is really fun. But my first time at that event, I was in a forward positioning. What do they call in Opie or something? Whatever they call it. I don't know.
Oh, a forward observation post.
Yeah, it was basically a forward observation post. We're in the middle of no man's land. Craters all around us because they're they dug craters and shell holes and whatnot. Barbed wire strewn all around, and we're in this what used to be a bunker but was bombed out looking. It's huddled down in the dead of night. So we have the moon shining down on us, and that's the only light for however far away. You can't see anything that's right in front of you, and we're basically just huddled in, and we're listening out for any sort of German encroachment, because if the Germans are doing a night raid, we got to be the ones that are responsible to alert the trench and raise the alarm and fight them back.
That is neat.
And keep in mind as well, these guys like to do melee combat stuff in World War One. They like to get in and be all punchy. So we're hanging back, and the guy next to me, he's portraying an Anzac, and we're talking in like first person. Like he has his whole backstory of like why he enlisted. And he's like, they called me Dorset because I'm from the Dorset's regiment. Was what I was portraying. So he just called me Dorset. He didn't have a name for me. He's like, hey Dorset, I'm like, what? Like, why are you here? I'm like, oh well, you know, my father was in the Boer War. And I thought it sounded like a great adventure, you know, that kind of thing. And as well, I'll never forget. He said the words to me. You know, this whole thing started over some guy named Gavrilo. What kind of a name is Gavrilo, anyways? Like, Serbian, I imagine. I had nothing else. So that was really cool, and like, and of course, both sides occasionally they're shooting up flares into the sky. Like, you know, like it's completely perfectly dark. So like, you know, dead silence, and all of a sudden you hear from like the flare lighting up the sky, and whenever it did, like we'd lift up our heads like a little bit over our little parapet to look around, make sure there are no Germans around before going slowly back down. Or like we'd like raise our helmet on like a stick to see if anyone shoots it and whatnot, to, you know, see if there's anyone there. You know, stuff like that. It was so like, it was peaceful, and I was freezing to death. And it felt so real because I was on the front and we were talking in like 1916 or 1918, whatever year it is, about the war and about the Germans and what we think about it all. And he like showed me some letters that he like picked up off of dead people. You know, he wrote letters that he wrote, you know, but he kept them from like you know, I found this corpse, whatever, and I figure if I ever get back, I'll deliver this letter for him, whatever, and let his wife know what happened. Which is just, it was really cool. And what's more, okay, one more thing from Newville. Before the actual event, they didn't just like, you know, whatever. We all like meet on the site and then like at a particular time, like, all right, the event is now on. So everyone goes and files into their trenches. Before the Allies were brought into our trench area, we had a medical examination. There were people there who were like representing like Red Cross nurses and whatnot, like some sort of nursing medical corps type thing. And they brought us in for physical and mental examinations. So they asked us a series of questions. They like held up fingers and told us to guess how many. Without my glasses, I'm like completely blind, so I'd like really squint. And it's funny because she was holding up like 3 fingers or whatever. I'm like, 2, because I genuinely couldn't see. Mm-hmm. And she's like, try again. 3, very good. And she marked me down as having vision. It was like it was a 3 and a 6, whatever that means. But my right eye was 3, which I think is like half strength. My left eye was marked as full strength, which is an absolute lie, but that's what they put. They like took measurements. My physical development was average and slight. They're like, smile for me. Teeth strong, heart strong. Joint movement good. They had you like move our arms and everything, and then they had us go in for our inoculations. And there was a guy with like a great big fake syringe, like really jabbing it into our arms to give us our inoculations before we marched off into war. And then we got these little blue cards. That was a certificate of medical examination. It was signed by the senior medical officer, dated November 8th, 1917, in the Neuville sector of France. It was so cool. It's like, the thing is, at first, when I was filling out this like little form, like declared age, height, weight, distinguishing marks, I was filling out all these like things on this little piece of paper. I thought it was an actual like official registration thing at first, but then I realized halfway through, oh no, this is all just for the reenactment. But it was so immersive. It felt genuinely real.
You said, like I said earlier in the stream, I enjoy showing off my toys, so to speak. I have a World War I spiked trench club.
Ooh.
I would like to show you.
Yes.
Red in his club.
Oh, and my musket, the 1862. I want to show you that too because the channel has named that the Red Light Liberator. Here is my World War I spiked trench club.
Oh God, that's brutal.
I've occasionally picked my teeth with it.
All right, power to you, I guess.
No, I would never, because I could just see, something like that happening, and then someone going, "Hey, how's it going?" Ow.
Yep. God.
I saw that at a flea market, and I was like, I don't know why, but I need that.
There you go.
As most collectors do. Why do I need? Do you really need that? No,
I don't,
but I
it looks
do.
Don't ask questions, Red. Just buy it.
Yeah, I also have this pistol, which is my first pistol. I think it was
Ooh, very
honestly.
pretty.
I think it was a conversion flintlock.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that style, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Ooh, who joined? Oh, Nolfi is in here with us. Nolfi, say hello.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Hello.
Nolfi, is that you?
No, that's Matt.
Oh. Oh. I mean, yay, Matt.
I wanted to see if you go for it.
Red, check your server. Okay, let me check my server. Which server?
Oh, he left again. Why does he keep leaving?
Something going on as Endice Fest.
He's probably just trying to get the mic to connect. Shelly, I don't see anything in the servers.
New server.
Oh, is there a new server? Ghost Stories and the Paranormal. Shemley, dude, you're right on it, man. Brady's just like, it's just Matt.
Oh, you got a problem with me? Because I don't know.
I think it all goes back to Cody's server.
Damn, Cody.
Damn it, Cody.
It could be cool if Cody joined in here. We'd have a lot of big people.
Oh yeah, I mean we'd have two big people, Brandon and Cody.
Brandon's obviously the superior one.
Yes.
Thank you?
No. That is a wholehearted thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot what we were talking about. Oh yeah, Civil War stories. Matt, do you want to go next? Well, just reenactment stories in general.
Yeah, sure. There's actually this event I go to. It's a biannual event in New Jersey. It's called a place called Historic Speedwell. It's where the telegraph was created back in the 1850s, 1840s. And it's just this great event because about 9 years ago, it was absolutely an awful place. It was run down. It was old. People would just come there and do graffiti. And honestly, it was like a neglected place. And then we kind of went in there and kind of saved it from, the continuing onslaught of New Jersey state parks under the current governor right now. And honestly, it's improved so much. We've renovated buildings. We've had probably 85 different skirmishes since we started going there. We have a Christmas ball every Christmas.
Nice.
So I celebrate Christmas like 4 times a year there. We usually stage a skirmish in the summer that usually is kind of like just for fun. Last year we actually had a Confederate battalion of all Henry rifles just for the sake of it.
Wow.
It's also where I learned why defarbing is really good because my first sergeant has a very particular method of if you don't defarb, he has a club and he hits you with it.
I mean, that is an effective way, I suppose, of instilling discipline in the ranks.
To not to interrupt Matt, but to help Brandon picturize the story. Brandon, do you know what a Henry rifle is?
One of the repeaters, right?
Yes, it is the known as the Golden Repeater.
Yeah, so an entire battalion of that sounds terrifying.
Unless
it was quite fun. It's quite fun.
Unless they're on your side. I mean,
I don't know if I trust it. I don't trust anything that fires more than like once every 20 seconds.
It's a lot of fun though. There's like a little marsh, and sometimes the Confederates will come up from there, and they'll just they'll mess around. They'll fire off a mortar or a mini cannon, and then they'll run at us. Sometimes there'll be like some close quarters combat, and they'll like fight in the marsh, and someone ends up getting like their face beaten in, supposedly. I remember one time I died face up. It was my mistake completely. I hated it, really. It was a 90-degree day. It was very humid.
Yeah, I made that mistake before.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't very pleasant. We did do a funny thing though, where we were trying to kill each other. Like I was wounded, a Confederate was wounded. We tried to kill each other.
I can just imagine
I
like
mean,
just two leg wounds crawling at each other, gonna kill you.
I actually do reenact with a guy. He's a double amputee on his legs. He has prosthetics, but most people don't know. So sometimes he'll pretend to get hit by a cannon or something like that, or he'll just be like he got shot through the knees. They amputate him. They put corn syrup mixed with red dye over his knees, and then they take him off the table. And people are like, oh, they just cut holes in the table. His legs are hiding. And then he gets off the table and he's like, holy crap, where are his legs?
If I was a leg amputee, that would be my humor towards reenacting. Like immediately go find a medical corps, and go, all right, this one's fake. How can we use this?
Yep. I mean, hey, it's there's a role for everyone in reenactment.
Oh yeah,
somewhere along the most everyone.
If you want to join a reenacting organization and say, well, I don't know if I would fit in, if there would be a role for me, it's no.
Yeah, there's something.
There is.
There's always a role.
We may not have found it today, but trust me, there is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's I have a lot of fun there. It's a biannual event. It's really a lot of fun. We gotten to the point now where we just go there and we're like, whatever you make, keep it. We don't need it. Fund it. Keep educating. Because to be honest, one thing that I do believe in and my organization believes in is education, and we try to fight a lot of what we consider to be a misinformation of history, which is what we really don't like. We don't like one-sided perspectives of all conflicts. We like to see multi-sided views, perspectives, because if you look at one side, you don't get the full picture, and you become biased in that idea.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I suppose. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Red. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, that's the one thing I really hate too, is that I go to high school right now. This is my last year, senior year. I hate going in. I go through a history textbook and I see certain armed conflicts are one-sided, or they're not a lot of time invested in it. So we try to correct that the best we can. We do school demonstrations still, and whether or not we get paid, we don't really care. We'll do it for free, and we'll even pay you if you'll let us do it.
Yeah,
we just want to make things right and do something.
Oh, yeah, that is a very admirable goal. I think that is one all reenactors try to achieve. Because, like you said, almost all history about wars is always one-sided. Like, it's always, these were the good guys and these were the bad guys. Here's what the good guys did, and all you need to know about these other people is that they were bad. You don't need to know their reasons for this war. They're just bad people. That's all there is to it. That's the sad part about why a lot of reenactors do what they do, is especially like Confederate reenactors, because one of the main things is one of the very common misconceptions, and Brandon, I'm sure you've heard this, is the Confederates only fought to preserve slavery or something like that. That is one of the most common things that they pound into textbooks, because they want it to seem that the North was all about freeing the slaves. The Civil War was all about the Freedom War. When
establishing a very complicated situation as a simplistic moral question.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Me and Matt alone did this last night. We easily went 2.5 hours on just here's the truth of the fact. And mainly what it came down to was mainly economics and the South wanting to live their way. And the North tried to the North was being a tyrant and saying, no, you live the way we tell you, and that's how it is.
On a more ideological and political, philosophical standpoint, I could go on with that sort of thing for quite a while. But
yes,
I know I also have rather fringe views when it comes to a lot of that kind of stuff in particular.
Yeah, I would love to chat more one-on-one on that, not on a live stream, just
safer that way.
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
I suppose it's my turn for my story.
Go ahead, Red.
This happened last year at the Wild West Fest event. They hosted a Civil War event, which was very hot. They had us camp out on a freshly cut field on very hot and humid days. And this was the first time I met Ethan, who portrays General Kautz. He was a Berdan sharpshooter he was a Confederate sharpshooter, and he had green pants. And I was just looking at his pants. I like those pants. And the first thing he says is, "You can't have my pants." And I'm like, "Oh, you started it now. I'm coming for those pants." So for the rest of the weekend, that was our thing. We were going back. I'm going to take those pants. So then out on the battlefield, we're firing back and forth, and I spot those green pants. And my battle cry that day was, "I'm stealing your pants!" And
That's weird.
you can hear me yelling across the field, "I'm stealing your pants." And then you'd hear Ethan say from the other side, "No, you ain't." But that is my favorite story because it has sparked a very, very good friendship.
That's the best way they develop.
So I guess you could say the generalized friendship is based on green pants.
Interesting.
There we go.
Wholesome.
Good fun, good fun.
Yes, that is the main point of reenactments. Teach history and have fun. It's when the people start acting stupid, and you noted in your demonstrating of the sounds of muskets, of your Brown Bess, how in North American reenactments we don't use ramrods.
Mhm.
There was a story of a reenactor who had a 1862, just like this one. He was
Mhm.
pouring twice. He was double loading, and
I know that one. Yeah.
packing it. So he was pouring 100 grains of black powder down here and packing it. These packed should only have about 30 grains max with a piece of lead in there.
Really? Wow.
Yes, they pack quite a punch for how little amount of powder you're putting in there, but they also pack very tightly. Of course, Matt can tell you more about that. He's owned a musket far longer than I have. And
what was it, Ren?
About 30 grains, would you say, in a packed musket with lead? Maybe a bit more.
You actually need about for enough escape velocity for a Manet ball to escape the musket successfully. You need at least about 60.
So I was far
However,
off.
it depends on what you're using as well.
This is true. But this man,
A lot compared to vests and whatnot.
yeah. But this man was pouring 100 grains of powder down and packing it. They already double loads people frown upon, but it's one of the more things you can get away with.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, he's just going for a loud boom. Okay. Still keep your eye on that guy because, yeah. And then he started packing it. Well, he packs it, leaves his ramrod in, fires, his musket blows up. Half of his face gone. I'm sure it looked like the thumbnail you had for the injury video where you got the burn on your hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
His right hand, amazingly, he escaped with 3 fingers.
Oh, God.
Burns all over his chest, and I'm sure they had to, cut that away at the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
His left arm, they said, I think someone said that it was half gone. The ramrod, God knows where it is. And the man next to him, I think, caught a couple pieces of metal on each side. Other people got burns.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's just, yeah. I've even been, but also you're also saying over in Europe they like to have more fun. I was contacted by a lady from Germany about my old unit, and she was going, "How can we improve?" I was like, "Well, one thing to remember, they weren't military. They were guerrillas. They were a ragtag bunch of guys. They only answered to a handful of military they were under. It was a lot of, I guess you could say, mercenary work." They were basically paid to kill.
That,
yeah, they're basically paid to kill. Oh man! All right, now I know there's a set. Now I know what everybody's waiting for. Let's bring on the farbs, the true itty gritty farbs that we are all.
Brett,
going
can I get my baton to hit you? Please give me just a sec. Give me like 30 minutes. I can go get it.
I think one of the biggest farbs out there is nylon flags.
Is what?
nylon flags like your modern day
Oh,
flags.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Modern day flag. Oh God, in Rev War Arena, it's terrible. Like event organizers, like big events, they'll be driving into the camp and they have like modern day British flags indicate where the British camp is. It's like it's such an easy.
They're not taking the time.
Yeah,
They're not taking the time. Exactly. They're not bothering to do the research.
and that really reflects on the people putting on the event.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, well, this is supposed to be heralded as a great event, and I just got here and I see that.
Mm-hmm.
All the beer cans in like in buckets. I don't know.
Honestly, just
if-
drinking in general, I don't like it. A lot of reenactments.
No, I think if you want to drink, save it for after hours.
Oh yeah, to be sure.
But I've seen people flat out break out a bottle of whiskey in the middle of the day, like before a battle.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's just not safe.
Now,
Is the thing.
I'll admit I
You're
have.
drinking alcohol before a hot, very humid day, running around battling. It's like, no, make sure you're hydrated, my guy.
I'll admit I have bought a beer, but that immediately went into a cooler, and it was kept cold for after hours.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But yeah, and I don't know if you guys use muckets at all.
I'm not familiar with the term.
I will grab mine right quick. It's a nifty little thing.
So I used to reenact with a guy. He started his first 6-pack at 10 in the morning on Saturday. I remember that.
Oh, this
It's a real champion of life, isn't it?
this nifty little tool is a mucket. It is it's used for cooking. I use it for mainly coffee.
Oh,
Yeah, it's got a bale handle on
no,
it, so you
nothing so official as all that. That looks very much post-industrial revolution.
These are also some people consider farb because of how widely they're used. Mainly reenactors use them because of how handy they are. They are very useful. But I've seen people open the top, put a beer can in it that'll fit that diameter, and close it, and they'll just be standing around going.
That's just kind of cringeworthy, is the thing.
Yeah, and I'm like,
It
come
is.
on, just pour the beer in there for God's sake.
Goodness.
Matt, do you have any farbs?
I have a few, but like not really major ones because my first sergeant makes sure you don't farb.
You farb, you get the bonk.
Oh yeah, you get the club. You get the club. Let me think.
Brandon's like, all right, these are all taken down in officer's
Well,
notes.
Usually, we set up like just a tent. It's a company tent, and usually we have like all the farb stuff in there, and we tie it off, and like
Yeah.
the public's not allowed to go in there.
That's the
However,
way to do it.
sometimes they just go in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't, like, at that point you cannot be blamed. And I mean, if
Yeah.
I ruined my own immersion to see, like, no, you don't look in the closed tent.
I was about to say that sets me off. You see a tent that is obviously not part of the main camp. That is probably either next to the commanding office, next to the command tent, or behind it a bit, and is closed off. That is obviously not one that you open up and go, pretty nice, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. I honestly hate that too. Like, I tuck things under my. I usually sleep on a cot, and I usually tuck like most of the modern stuff under there. However, people always like, "What's under here?" I'm like, "Oh, come on, you got to do that to me."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, come on, those are our hiding places. Those are our special places.
That's
I
my
try to
hiding.
leave as much modern stuff in my car as possible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Something
I
like
think-
personal items that I need on me. But my usual philosophy is I try to bring as little as possible to every event that I go to.
Yeah, I usually take my knapsack.
I also often hotel it, so
I usually just take my knapsack, my bed, which depending on what impression I'm doing, it'll be sleeping on the ground, and my tent, and of course all my gear, but and of course my diabetic supplies. That's probably the most modern things I carry.
Yeah,
is all my
need those,
diabetic
you'll need
supplies.
Yeah, I mean, at that stage, you can't be blamed for farbery if it's like, oh, but this is actually a medical need.
Yeah,
so,
I would dare someone while I'm taking my insulin to go, that's farb. Be like, and
I think another Farby thing. Oh, it's actually not that far, but I think it's kind of funny. Is when I figured out that Santa was a Confederate. I was at the Gettysburg Remembrance Day parade like 2-3 years ago. It was like my first one doing it, and there was actually a bomb threat made against the parade and a shooting attempt also. I will say I've never felt more safe under the cover of snipers, but I met Confederate Santa. He was a lieutenant general. He was very nice, very southern. He wore an all red jacket, like a wool jacket, red pants. He wore some nice artillery boots, and he had a red kepi, and he had a really nice beard. It was really fun.
I thought you were going to say that he was literally just dressed as Santa Claus for the parade. I was going to say, oh no.
He was also carrying a sword too. Yeah.
Have you been a good Johnny Reb this year?
It was always fun. It's because I see him every year, and I'm like, Santa, get me a new musket, get me this, get me that, get me a better governor. Even I don't know.
Now for the big daddy of farbs, Brandon.
Ready?
You are the king of knowing all the farbs. Bestow us your wisdom.
Some of the biggest things that really bother me is, honestly, just like reenactors repeating a lot of bad history, typical like people standing behind the idea that the British Army, walked everywhere and they weren't smart enough to use things like cover as they were maneuvering. How people insisting that the Americans were better marksmen and how they were running around using rocks and trees and that's why they won the war, and how it was all militia versus the standing army, and just a lot of that just generic standard stuff that I really dedicate most of my channel to going against. And particularly, one thing that I despise is when people at reenactments will use the historical lesson as like a comparison to modern day politics.
Yes.
Actually, yes. I have something I wanted to make a video about. It's I have saved on my computer somewhere. Where is it? Here we are. It's like some meme that I saw going around on something in Massachusetts. It's called Patriots Day, April 19th, the day that Lexington and Concord happened. That was talking about the Battle of Lexington and how, ergo, X, Y, and Z modern day political policies are bad, as far as like basically using the fact that the Battle of Lexington happened as like a gun control argument. Which is like, these are very different like it's like you can be for or against very particular political things, but the Battle of Lexington and Concord was a very specific circumstance that has nothing to do with what you're making it out to be. Like people making it out to be like, oh, like the army came in to steal personal property. It's like, well, no, actually, it was towns hoarding military supplies. Like they were hoarding cannon, for crying out loud. This wasn't just like the government coming in to take people's guns. It was a bit more complicated than that. It was actually going in to seize illegal weapons held by what we would today call terrorists. But
yeah.
That's something else. I don't get into that, though, because that's not here or there. I talk about the particular circumstances those people were facing and try and allow the public to make their own interpretations as far as who was in the right, who was in the wrong, things like that, because that's not our role as reenactors to lecture people about, the evil Democrats and the evil Republicans and the evil this politician, evil that politician, based off of when I read, a history book in 5th grade. And so, yeah, leave politics out of it.
Yeah.
Modern politics is Farby.
That's usually what we try to do. Is that if you're gonna get into politics, they say either change the subject right away or try to talk them down from it.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm reminded of one time at the Battle of Monmouth reenactment down in New Jersey, which is like notoriously super like warm, very very warm and whatnot.
It is.
Talking with members of the public about that, they asked me like, "Oh, it must be really warm in that." I'm like, "Oh yes, no, to be sure." And talking about how like heat exhaustion and malnutrition and like dehydration and whatnot were some of the most deadly things for the army back in the day. Like, oh, like so it was just this hot back then at the real battle. I'm like, well, I don't know about exactly this temperature at exactly that day, but yeah, there were days that were this hot, and the British Army had to adapt their uniforms to accommodate for these sorts of environments. I'm talking about like the different accommodations in my uniform that I made and how I changed the hat, things like that. But they're like, no, they're cool. But like, so do you believe in this whole global warming thing? It's like, that's not okay. I guess we're here now. So I had to like try and find some way to cop out and bring it back to history as best I could.
I had one like that too, actually. I remember one person was actually like that, and I was like, well, I guarantee you, if they were alive today, they would have adapted to this. That was the best way I could put it, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from General Nolfi.
Shay.
What's your guys' opinion on the Stun Shay YouTube channel?
Shay Films.
Atten Shay Films. I think I'm familiar with them.
I enjoy his content a great deal, and actually, it's funny that you say, because I literally had a phone conversation with him a couple of hours ago today. We chatted a little bit as far, because apparently his channel is doing very well lately, so he wanted to talk a little bit about like, dealing with like comments and how we, responding to them, and like what my work schedule is like, to see, like basically we were just comparing notes basically on how we deal with particular things. He has a really good channel. He deals with a lot of like Civil War myths and whatnot.
I was considering watching him, so I marked him for later. I think I'll definitely watch him now.
Yeah.
I can thoroughly recommend. He does a lot of good work.
I think I will. Yeah.
One of the big questions that I hate getting whenever I portray Confederates was this man. Oh my gosh, this man walked up, and I was standing, just standing around camp. It was right before battle, so we all had our gear on. This man walks up, this Flatlander, looks at me and he goes, "How many slaves do you own?"
Christ, are you kidding me?
I'm like, do I just, do I handle this with a level-headed manner and go, well, I'm a poor farmer, so none, or just look at this guy and go, all of them, I own them all.
They're mine.
Don't say that.
They're all mine.
I would love to get a question like that. I'd love to do Confederate one day, and I would answer one. Just be, like, oh yeah, most slave owners, statistically for whatever like the state is, they own like one or two, and small landholder, type thing. I would just give a number, and I would talk about the history of like, hey, here are the stats. Not everyone owned slaves. Some people owned a whole bunch of slaves, and a lot of people owned one or two slaves. Like, talk about the statistics and the numbers, and then of course you can bring it into, well, just because I'm portraying Confederate doesn't mean that I am racist. Like,
that is exactly
that's different. In the exact same way that like one of these days I'd love to get like an SS German impression or whatever. Pretty much just again to have that conversation. Like people accuse me of something, like, no, my guy, I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
But then how are you wearing the uniform? Well, because that's not what it's about.
Yeah. I answered it the exact same way you said you would. And I said, well, I mean, I only own one, and right now he's back home taking care of my parents and helping on the farm. He stepped back like, aren't you afraid he's going to kill him? I'm like, oh my God. I have dug the hole deeper. I should have said all of them. Oh dear. And I go, no, why would he do that? He goes, well, don't you beat him? I'm like, this man has to be joking. I pray this man is joking. And I go,
I hate when people do that.
And luckily my sergeant saw it, and because he was like started like trying to pin me in to be like, admit the Confederacy was racist. Something like that. And luckily my sergeant was like, come here, son, I need you for something. I was like, well, I'd love to answer your question, but duty calls. And I got over there, I was like, thank God. And he goes, what was he asking you? I said, he walked up and asked how many slaves I own. He said, what'd you tell him? I said, one. And he goes, did he ask you then if you beat him? I was like, yeah, how'd you know? He goes, he asked me that too. I'm like, is this man just going around each Confederate? Like, one of these will admit it. One of these guys.
Yeah. Some people just don't know the line of like.
Yeah.
Just how to be polite.
The way I put it, which I hate putting it this way, but without going into like a whole long hour speech about how they were all treated. I don't think any less of me for this. This is just a simple way of getting across. I said at the time, slaves were in a lot of cases basically kept as tools, and were used for manual labor. And I said, and I don't like comparing people like this, but if you have a hammer, are you going to beat the hammer against a rock or throw it against a tree so much that it doesn't work? No. So if you owned a slave, why would you beat the person to a point to where they can no longer function?
You beat them just to the point that they can still function, but their soul is so crippled that they won't dare to escape.
Oh God.
I
It's
know.
often the case.
And they when I tell people like that, they're like, "Oh, that actually does make a lot of sense." And I look at them and I go, "Now don't think people are hammers. Don't throw an infant against a tree." They don't like that.
Interesting way to think of it.
They don't, like I said, I don't like doing that reference, but it gets the point across quick.
Makes sense. I mean, I actually did read this one book about. I told you about this last night, Red. The guy from my town. He had a brother in Virginia, and the other guy was from my town. You remember?
Oh yeah, and the Miss Lizzie.
Dizzy Miss Lizzie. Yes.
Dizzy Miss Lizzie,
well,
the best fashion dress lady.
You want me to tell that story too?
Oh yeah, Brandon, you're going to love this.
Let me tell the other one first. The one brother who was the abolitionist came to his brother's plantation in Virginia. He was a registered plantation owner. He owned about 53 slaves. And he literally went there basically to condemn his brother for owning slaves. He got there and basically he was like, you beat them, you do bad things to them. And basically he went there and he was like, all these slaves, basically, they're not slaves. They're house workers. Most of them make money. Most of them are really nice. Most of them really, really like him. And they would honestly rather stay there. I don't mean like they forced him. Like a lot of them came and went. He was very nice to him. He was like, really, they're my family technically.
Yeah, which was the case with a lot of Southerners.
Yeah, exactly.
They were treated a lot like family.
Yeah. I mean, in the book, though, he did say is that the way you could tell the Union Army was near is when the slaves started to just run away. He said if they ran away, that meant the army was usually within about 20 miles of where you lived.
Now, if that doesn't put into perspective that, it wasn't all, the Southern beat slaves and the Union was all, yeah, if that was the case, why did they run from the Union?
Exactly. All right, now Dizzy Miss Lizzie.
Before you do that, I do have a question for Brandon.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you ever get any questions like that, resorting to slavery at all?
Not so much because of the time period that I'm portraying. But it is still worth talking about that the British were the ones oftentimes liberating slaves, and the Americans, for all the ideals of liberty and whatnot, did not extend it to all men. But again, on a more ideological level, I must say, what I would say and how I would phrase the overall institution of slavery, I think, is very, very different. I would say that regardless of how much people may say, "Oh, well, they're like family to us," you cannot have family or anything close to an equal relationship when there is the implicit threat of violence in that relationship. Yes, we treat them very, very well, but ultimately, if they refuse to do the labor, ultimately, if they run away, if they do something that we don't like, well, at that point, they are property and they can be treated as such. There is this implicit power dynamic that is inherently evil to it as an institution. The idea, I suppose, a lot of people, for example, when it comes to people like Thomas Jefferson, and this is a bit more related to what I do. If anyone ever asks something about like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington, anyone like that, and how they treat their slaves, or in fact, in the case of Jefferson, having a relationship with his slaves or with his slave, an individual, I have seen people talk about, whether it was consenting, whether it was, good. I would argue that when it comes to someone like a slave, inherently it is, in Jefferson's case, it would be rape. He was a rapist because if property, a person who is completely within your power cannot consent. They do not have the power truly to do so. On an ideological, on a philosophical level, it is not possible. I do take a rather stringent line when it comes to that kind of thing, so to say. And I do genuinely believe that it's very unfortunately the case, but many of the Black Americans who fought for the rebels in that case, they went with the wrong horse, as it were, as far as what ended up working out for them as a population in the long run. I'm rambling.
It's fine.
Still, very, very nice. You're very enlightened, I gotta say. I like that.
Yes.
I studied philosophy for 3 years, which kind of leads into a lot of this stuff as far as...
This is one of the big things that I admire about you, Brandon, is how you can... your way with words. I'm a writer, personally. I've written... my way with words, I can... If I wish, I can touch your soul to the point where you cry. I can make you feel tears of joy. I can make you want a dog, even if you're allergic to dogs. I have a way with words that I can do stuff like that. But I can't speak like that.
Well, thank you.
You were awesome.
And thank you, Mr. August, for enjoying listening to my rambling.
Nolfi says his the ghost story he wanted us to hear earlier. He says it was at the July after day 3 at Gettysburg, and I'm reading it as him. Me and 3 other men were in the woods behind our camp, and on a log sat 3 CSA soldiers sitting on it. And the CSA camp was 2 miles across from us, and we went to talk to them and rounded a tree, and they disappeared.
Wow.
Spooky.
Oh,
spooky.
And in fact, on the note of spooky, it has nothing to do with it. I was going to say on the note of being spooky, but it has absolutely nothing to do with that. I was looking for a transition. I am afraid, gentlemen, that I am going to have to. Oh, there you go. I am going to have to get going at this point. Time passed an awful lot longer than I anticipated with all this.
Oh, with good company.
Yeah, this was good fun. Hold on. Yes,
you get cast off in good times.
Yeah. So, well, yes, indeed, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Red, for having me.
If at any point you wish to come back, I know my fans would love to have you. I would love to have you as a guest again. Hands down, the most knowledgeable.
I'll see about I'll post this after the fact, the VOD, whatever they call it.
Why, thank you.
Again.
Why, thank you. That is very generous of you to do.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Yes, everyone.
Now,
I'm not used to saying doing outros when it's not.
Before you go, can you give us your best rendition of the Rebel Yell?
Of a rebel?
Yes.
Hold on. Oh God. I don't think so. Just because I feel like my neighbors wouldn't appreciate it.
And there's also been something I've been dying to tell you.
It's what they call a cop-out and an excuse. And I'm sticking to it.
There's also been something I've wanted to say to you in person for a while, and for the time being with the Rona stuff, this is probably as close as I'll get. My Lord Brandon, it is an honor.
Well, thank you very much, sir. No, again, I'm glad that you considered me as a worthy of a guest this evening. This was all good fun. I learned a fair amount, especially as regards all the Civil War stuff and everything. It was interesting to see differences in the dynamics, and also another good lens into the Civil War reenactments. It reminds me that I really do need at some point to take up Civil War, be it as an observer or anything else, really. I mean, again, I got a friend of mine actually in Ohio does Confederate reenactment. So sooner rather than later, I'm sure at some point I'll be able to get out to an event with you guys. Or, well, at least with you, Red. I know you're in Ohio.
Represent.
So yeah, no, sometime in 2021 I'll be getting out there, and I'll see if I can make it to one of the events. Hopefully, if this pandemic thing ever actually ends. Here's hoping.
Here is hoping. In
Hopefully.
that case, thank you for
All right.
stopping by.
All right. Thank you both. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Take care now.
That was a treat.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
That went incredibly well. I do hope he comes back because I not only did. Oh, he gave a heart.
Nice guy he is.
He is a very nice guy. He's an Ohioan. We're all nice people.
I don't know. I haven't met very many Ohioans.
Trust me, we're nice. And if you think otherwise, I'll shoot you.
Try me.
That was a joke. Get it? Ohioans are so nice, and yeah.
Oh, I think I pissed him off.
I think otherwise.
I just met the guy, and now I think he hates me. Oh, well. It's okay.
No, Clone, I do at times do Confederate reenacting when the need arises.
I will say, though, that was the fastest, 3 hours of my life.
Yes, it was, and I thank him. I thank you, Brandon, for spending that much time with us, with a small channel such as myself.
I think definitely I should take up the YouTube reenacting stuff. I feel like that would be good. I feel like I could probably have a shot at it.
Oh, absolutely. By the way,
If you subscribe, it'd be a lot. It'd mean a lot.
Oh, I think I already am.
You can't subscribe to me because I have a private channel, I think. So I'm gonna do something about that in a few days, maybe.
Okay. By the way, I took your advice. Great back scratcher.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you know what? Unfortunately, I do also have some work to do, and I want to relax a bit because as soon as I got home, I got right on here from work.
Sucks. Sorry, man. I mean, I wish I still had work. I was furloughed and then I got fired. So sorry. I get it.
It's fine, man. I possibly tomorrow is the singing live stream. So yes,
Well.
Exactly.
Maybe
John.
I'll hop on tomorrow too. I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
We'll see. But guys, with that being said, there are a few channels I want to shout out. Starting off this time, not with General Cody, but Brandon F. Go subscribe to him.
Yay!
General Cody HD, Calibrated Core. Oh, I almost said, you know what? Do it twice. Brandon F. Go subscribe. That's a rule. The Civil War Digital Digest, Company D, Second United States Sharpshooter, and of course the Townsends. There's a very special sutler I wish to shout out, which is CNC Sutlery. I order a lot of my gear from there. This coat is from them. They are hands down one of the nicest sutlers you'll ever come across. They will answer any question you have. They will even rush your order if you absolutely need it. They got me a coat in one day when I needed it for a parade. I do.
They did that for me too.
I do pray you guys go and check them out. Tell them I sent you. Tell them Red sent you. Who knows what that'll lead to in the future. With that being said, see you guys in the next video and or stream.